Okay, so let me take a look at, are we missing anybody before we, who's Amy Cooper?
I'm A. Cooper. I kind of took role. The only person who's not present right now is Lori. A. Cooper is TREC enforcement staff. This is Mark.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we'll call this meeting to order. And Ron, are you doing minutes as well, as best you can during this?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to keep up, and if it's a little slow, I apologize, but we'll see how this works.
Okay, so you got a roll call of all the members that are present and
right.
Who is not present.
Mark's gonna double check me on it, but we'll get it correct. We've got the list here.
All right, so let's see. Chelsea, you're there, right?
I am. I'm just incapable of unmuting my mic quickly, but I'm here.
Why don't we just have you do a formal introduction of Vanessa and then let her talk a little bit, say hi to everybody, and we'll start with the items on the meeting.
That is great. I will turn my camera on for this. Vanessa came to us, I believe it feels like a long time ago now because we've lived the lifetime of COVID-19, but was it February 1st, Vanessa?
Yes, it was.
Okay, February 1st. So this is her first broker-lawyer meeting. Vanessa came from the Railroad Commission, where she was doing really all sorts of general counsel type work with a heavy emphasis on human resource issues and handling, pieces of enforcement and rule drafting and managing a staff. I know her from our time overlapping at the Juvenile Justice Department, which was just about a year, but have been trying to figure out how to hire her and since she left the Juvenile Justice Department. So really grateful to have her with us. She has hit the ground running. I believe the last commission meeting was something like her 4th day of employment, and she presented rules at the commission meeting. So she's not scared. So I think you are going to be much better off with her in the general counsel role than me. She is a very strong legal mind. And Mark came on board in a different capacity than he has been just a few weeks after Vanessa came. He is our new deputy general counsel, formerly the director of enforcement for TREC. So between the two of them, we have expertise in our rules and law and real estate, and then also more traditional general counsel work. So I'm delighted by the team that they have established. And just as an aside, it probably won't affect this committee greatly, but we have also hired a new general counsel for TALCB as Kristen Werman moved on in February, I think. She became the general counsel for the prison system, which is I bet it's a very interesting time to be there now. So we have just hired Kathleen Santos as her replacement, and she will begin on May 1st. We have an all-new legal team. There will be some growing pains involved with that. There may be pieces of historical knowledge that we don't know, so I will apologize in advance. But I think that the support you will receive with Vanessa at the helm is significantly greater than what I was able to offer you. Vanessa, you want to say anything?
Sure. I'm really happy to be here. I too was looking for a way to work with Chelsea again. When I left TJJD, she was one of the parts I was really sad to leave. And I'm excited to be here. I'm particularly excited to work with this group because everyone tells me that, one, you guys are fun, and two, that I will learn a ton. It's basically like attending a CLE. But I am here for you if you ever need anything. Like Chelsea said, my focus has really been more administrative law-based my entire practice. And so I've got a lot of open meetings, a lot of rulemaking, things like that. And I am now complemented by Mark, who has been an incredible asset in terms of real estate enforcement knowledge, all that kind of stuff. So really excited to be here.
Well, welcome. I want to extend the same offer that you've probably gotten from all your coworkers. Everybody on this committee is to serve you and assist you, and that goes for specific questions about why does this contract operate this way, and just general real estate questions. If you're not as familiar with real estate, anybody on this committee is happy to chat with you, as well as Mark and all your fine folks at TREC. So I want to welcome you and tell you that we're here to help and serve.
Well, thank you. I will take you up on that.
All right. Okay, so first item, so we call this to order. We now have reports and work. I might say very fine work from our 3 working groups. So the first one on our agenda here is the termination paragraph working group. And who was in that group, first of all?
That was Ron, me. Who else was in the group? Lee, were you on the group?
Yes.
I don't remember.
I know we talked about all the fixtures and stuff.
Okay. Well, Ron or Brian, you guys appoint a point person to discuss what we have are kind of a couple competing drafts, or maybe 1 or 2. But you guys, I'm going to let you have the floor if you guys want to decide.
Tell you what, Ron, I'll do this one and you can do the research.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, paragraph 23, I think there was a rough consensus that we wanted to find a solution to the issue of why we have many agents wanting to deliver option fees to the title company when the contract currently provides for the option fee to go to the seller. And that creates problems for both title companies and the parties to the transaction, because oftentimes buyers would deliver the option fee to the title company at the end of their 3-day, and maybe the option fee doesn't get to the seller, and then the buyer loses her option fee. There were several different discussions on how we might be able to fix it. One option was to just have the earnest money go to the title company, and then if the buyer exercised an unrestricted right to terminate, then all of the earnest money would go back to the buyer, save and except, say, $100, which would then go to the seller as independent contract consideration, which is a common way of doing it in commercial transactions. The other option would be to keep the option fee and the earnest money and provide that both of them would go to the escrow agent within the same amount of time. And then as soon as the title company got good funds, the title company could deliver it, the option fee to the seller without any question, without needing to get permission from anybody, but it would just be a sort of, the seller wants the option money, the title company gives it to them. And that, the goal of the subcommittee was, how can we achieve our purposes making as few changes as possible to paragraph 23? And so the second option, where there is still the option fee that everyone knows about, but just make it clear that it goes to the title company, is what we had a consensus for. And as you can see here, we revised paragraph 23 as shown on the screen with relatively few changes. It provides that the buyer delivers the option fee to the escrow agent within the same time that the buyer has to deliver the earnest money under paragraph 5. It's made payable to the escrow agent, and we provided that the buyer irrevocably authorizes the escrow agent to release the option fee to the seller at any time without further notice or consent. and releases the escrow agent from liability from following those instructions. And then we also had, if you go up a little bit on the screen, we also had provision in paragraph 18A making it clear that whenever the escrow agent makes disbursement, it's conditioned upon collection of good funds acceptable to the escrow agent. That's the same.
Can you explain for those that are not in the title business a little bit about Check 21 and what that issue is in terms of a personal check and the ability of the title company to disperse out of that within, say, 10 days or less?
Yeah, you know, if a title company receives money, it holds the money and then it's authorized to disperse it, but for purposes of solvency of the industry and the Texas Department of Insurance being able to audit a title company's escrow accounts, there have to be controls on when the title company is really deemed to have the funds in their escrow account so that they can disperse funds. And so there's the concept of good funds under the Texas Department of Insurance rules. If the title company receives money, receives funds, when does it constitute good funds in their account such that they can disperse the funds? And so Texas Department of Insurance has a rule, I believe it's T27, I don't have that in front of me. And they have different descriptions of types of funds and what constitutes good funds. A personal check generally is not good funds, but we're given flexibility. If I receive a check under $1,500, I can consider that to be good funds. And if I want to, I can disperse those funds. That's optional with the particular title company. Other things, certified checks, cashier's checks, those can constitute good funds. Currently, it's not usually acceptable to a title company if you have a really large cashier's check, because there are ways in which those may not actually be collected funds. And so most title companies are going to want the best option, the gold standard, which is wired funds. And in things that are of any substance, most everybody now just wires funds. It's very simple, as opposed to a cashier's or certified check. So collection of good funds acceptable to escrow agent means that the escrow agent has money in their account, which is deemed to be sufficient for the title company to then disperse funds based on that.
Okay. So just to give an example and ask you a question, if a buyer were to deliver an earnest money check for a personal check for $2,500, and the option fee in the contract was $500, let's say that was written, the title company could not give the seller that $500 until that $2,500 check clears and constitutes good funds under those regulations. And by contrast, if it were a wire transfer of $2,500, they could disperse that immediately if they want.
Correct. And you'll notice, though, in what we proposed in paragraph 23, we give them the option. The option fee shall be made payable to escrow agent and may be paid separately or combined with the earnest money in a single payment. In your example, if we got two checks, we have that $500. We could disperse it. That would be something that is at the discretion of the individual title company when you have a $500 check.
Okay.
Hey, Charles.
There is the chance that they could bounce the check, right? And the title company is on the hook if they disperse that. So most title companies, if it's anything of substance, will want to wait in 10 days or so, be sure that they have collected funds before they disperse. And that's the way it is right now.
Charles, this is Ron. I have wanted to kind of take a little bit of a further dive into this paragraph. And after our committee meeting, I struggled with an issue that we kind of touched on in the committee, but didn't know whether to bring it up, and so I'm going to go ahead and raise the issue. I do have a possible solution, so I want to see kind of raise that issue. I like the changes that the task force has proposed. I think this works really well, but here's the particular problem, and it involves when the option fee is paid late. What does the escrow agent do? Do they have to get instructions from the seller? Do they reject? Do they accept? What happens if they accept and they don't communicate to the buyer? I think that issue needs to be addressed. So if I can pull up, give me half a second to pull up another thoughts about this. And I also think that one of the issues of concern is that in the new paragraph 23 that we have proposed, which is this one, we tie the time period for the delivery of the option fee to paragraph 5. And then, of course, paragraph 5 contemplates a remedy of default if it's not timely paid, which basically now means that we're going to be moving paragraph 23's remedy into a default, which I don't think was ever contemplated. That's when I got back and I started thinking about this more, I was struggling with, if you will, the two remedies and how they're different in paragraph 5 versus paragraph 23. Paragraph 23's remedy is there's just no option, but the contract continues. So my question would be, and this is, we could email this to you right here. I've kind of outlined it in written form. So I think if we go ahead and make some modifications, I'll let you read that for just a second, maybe digest that, and then propose what I think might be a solution for that particular question.
Okay, I've read the.
So I was suggesting that what we do is break up paragraph 5 just simply this way, so that paragraph A just deals with the timing of the delivery of the money, and then we move the default issues into a separate subparagraph, which that keeps paragraph 5 the same. And then we come in here and we talk about that particular problem, and we identify that it's got to be the time within paragraph 5A. Now, here's where we get into the bigger issue, which is, what does the escrow agent do?
It's one check.
So here, all I'm doing is breaking up paragraph 23 into subparagraphs. So not really making.
Oh my God.
Oh, that looks like Brian Watts' work, right?
I know, but it's all the same language. It's all the same language, except for what it. So it's the same language, just broken up into subparagraphs. So A just deals with the delivery of the option fee and what happens. Okay. And then B ties it to the paragraph 5A. What I haven't read there deals with what happens with the escrow agent if you have a late payment. So that we're telling the escrow agent you're not authorized to accept a late payment without the seller's consent. Now, if y'all don't think this is a big enough problem, I'm okay with that, but I assume that earnest money gets paid late routinely. And if we're going to mix the two, then that means the option fee is going to be paid late routinely.
You correctly identified an issue, but and Brian's definitely more in the business than I am, but I can tell you that one of the drivers behind this is the title industry which, especially smaller agents who are run by their customers, who are commanded by their customers, and you have a top agent that brings, a top broker that brings a small title agent all his or her business and basically tells them what to do. They're the ones that are bringing the option fee to the title company and saying, handle this. The title company does not have enough economic muscle to say no to them. This creates another dilemma for the title agent to have to say no to their customer. I'm afraid they're not going to do it.
Well, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do if we adopt the changes from the task force and the payment's now made late? What are you going to do?
Let me say this. First of all, I love the change of splitting 5 into 5A and 5B, and then in paragraph 23, specifying paragraph 5A. That totally clears the issue in my mind. What happens, though, since we said that you can give one check to the escrow for the earnest money, the option fee, so it's $5,000 plus $500, and they wire in $5,500. First of all, do I send that wire back and say I don't accept it? I think the money can be put into the title company, and then the seller can say, I reject that option fee. Send it back to the buyer. Don't send it to me because they did not timely pay the option fee, and so therefore I reject it. But to say that the title company needs to start making a decision as to whether something is timely delivered and whether the title company can or cannot accept the check is creating more problems, and it just makes it more confusing in my mind.
And I agree with Brian. The one thing that we can do is add in the option fee receipt a date and time as well. Right now, it only has the date. And so the title company be responsible for marking down when they actually receive it to make sure that it is received. And if it's not, the time is at the essence. So if it's at 5:01, marked on the receipt, then it's too late and there is no option. And that's, to me, a black and white issue. It takes the title company out of, having to reject or decide what the parties want to do with it.
Yeah, and in most instances, the title company, I don't think, will pay the option fee over to the seller unless the seller asks for it. The easiest thing is just to credit it in closing. I think that's what most people are going to do. So that gives the seller time to say, do not give me that option fee check. Now, if the title company is wanting to be proactive and they unilaterally send the check over to the seller can just say, here's your check back. There was no option. They did not pay it time.
Can I say, in practice, as a broker, I don't have it come up much. I don't know how germane this is, but if we receive an option fee late, I'm not going to advise my seller to attempt to invalidate the option period because I want the buyer to have the ability to have a home inspected and check everything out. And I don't have many option fees delivered late, so I don't know, but do we have a lot of cases where sellers are trying to get rid of the option period?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, and I would say, Charlie, I think you're right. I think most of the better, more educated license holders are, trying to control their sellers and encourage them not to do that. But, just like anything else, there's sellers that are bullies and they don't hire agents that will stand up to them.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what about this? What if we just add a very simple sentence at the end of paragraph 23 that says, a seller may reject any option fee payment that is not timely made?
Well, we have a provision already that says if it's not paid timely, you have no option. That's right here.
I mean, I'm okay with what paragraph 23, our revised paragraph 23 that one change about paragraph 5A.
All right, so I just want to raise the issue here. So here's what I think is going to happen and hopefully it's a smaller number of cases, and maybe we just let this go and see what happens. But if a buyer pays a few days late, then he goes and he tries to exercise his option 5 or 6 days later to terminate. It may be then that the seller says, no, you have no right to terminate because you paid late. And he's going, well, it was accepted down by the escrow agent, and you never raised the issue for 5 or 6 days to tell me it was late.
So Ron,
Mhm.
here's a suggestion. What if you had language in paragraph 23 that says that notwithstanding, regardless of any late acceptance of the option fee by the escrow agent, that shall not operate to, your option is still late. I'm not phrasing that very well for a drafter, but the idea would be to have language that trumps that basically says the option fee is late, regardless of any receipt by the escrow agent. And that the escrow agent is not authorized, I don't want to say that, but I don't want them, they're not deemed to be the agent of the seller for that purpose.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, so that's it. Late payment of option fee is not acceptance by seller, and a seller may reject any option fee payment that's not timely paid.
Well, the problem is then you have a potential conflict with the sentence I highlighted if you do that, because that sentence that I've highlighted says it's done. You don't have an option. And so there's nothing further to do. Now we could change that sentence and say that only applies if the seller raises the question before the buyer terminates.
We have this issue now.
Yeah.
Black and white nature of that provision.
Yes.
You have all the questions you get when option fee issues come up, and we can determine when it was actually delivered. It was always black and white, and that was I would fear getting away from that with inviting waivers in
I was wondering, isn't it the same thing? What if the earnest money is delivered late? What does the title company do?
Well, no, then
that's different there, because the earnest money, you can accept it late, you deliver it late, and as long as the contract hasn't been terminated, then it's
Doesn't the seller say, hey, I want to terminate due to lack of earnest money, the form we did last year?
Yeah, right.
You don't have to check with the seller, see what they want to do.
Now, the seller, it's a race with respect to earnest money. The seller can terminate any time before buyer delivers the earnest money.
Right, but if it's late, what does the title company do? Don't they call the seller and say, hey,
Company pays it.
Moving.
Unless the seller has given notice of termination before the earnest money is paid, the title company accepts.
let me back up a minute here. I wanted to raise the issue to talk about it. I am okay with going with the changes as we proposed. I would like to see, as you mentioned, Brian, breaking out paragraph 5. And maybe the better thing to do is let this go, and then if it becomes a problem, we address it later. But I felt like I needed to bring the issue to the committee, knowing that could be a possibility that things might happen that way. It could be an education issue that says to the agents, make sure it gets done timely because this is going to be a potential problem for you.
Well, I think Ron is right on, and I don't think that there could be I think there will be a problem. I don't think that's.
But we from time to time see it.
It's likely, and we didn't do a good job apparently of educating them to deliver the option fee to the seller. So I don't know if saying it's an education issue. I mean,
Listing agent's gonna have to watch the time frames and if it's, 4:00 on the last day, they call the title company to find out what's going on and give the seller, a choice.
but Terry, do you think they're really gonna do that when they couldn't even deliver the auction fee to the right person to begin with?
Well, I mean, it's education, but now they've got two things that are at the same time, so to speak, to the same place. So maybe it would be easier for them. And they don't have to get in the car and deliver it. They have so many problems with that, with being late.
Do you think that agents are verifying that the earnest money has been delivered timely, or do you think that they're waiting until the title company calls and says, hey, just so you know, we never got a wire or a check or whatever?
Well, I hope that they're calling to check on it.
Say it again.
I hope that they're calling to check on it. That's their duty to make sure that that's in.
Well, I don't agree, but I'm asking, what do you think is really happening?
Our practice is starting my title company. I've had one call with somebody checking on the other side whether earnest money's actually been delivered.
Oh, there.
This is Amy. Do we need to, so in the earnest money paragraph, it has the number of days already filled in for 3 days. Do we need to make the option just be automatically 3 days as well? And then that way the time frames are running together all the time instead of it being 2 different time frames?
Yeah, that's what we did in this proposal.
So the one I'm looking at still has a blank, sorry.
And circle back real quick. Most, I think, agents and parties to the transaction get notice of the earnest money being delivered through the receipted contract, the receipted earnest money. In practice, most title companies are sending that out to all the parties, and only when they don't receive that within, a good period of time have they, like I said, only personally one call that has come in. But that's really the notice, I think, that the earnest money is actually.
I think the language is good. I really like it. I think Ron is, by separating paragraph 4 or 5 in the APP, that helps distinguish the different remedy for late delivery of earnest money and late delivery of option fee. And I think the very fine point that Ron has teased out and discovered is one that existed before. When you have a late delivery of an option fee by buyer's broker to seller's broker, and the seller's broker, their front desk at that option because that's their practice, there is an interesting legal question as to whether that prejudices the seller rejecting that option. Maybe yes, maybe we haven't seen that litigated, but I haven't seen that be a massive dispute in the last 5 years. So the receipt party of the broker for the option fee of the title company isn't going to change that dynamic. Change that dynamic. Really, we're keeping the practice the same. You still have the receipt of an option fee, and the language in the contract is clear that if it's not delivered timely, you don't have an option. I think we can rely on it.
And Charles, I had one concern or issue or question. Where it says irrevocable authorization, are the other provisions in the contract revocable? I apologize if you already talked about that. I just was wondering if this authorization was different from other contract terms and that's why it was irrevocable.
Well, Ron, do you want to speak to that? I don't see that word used very often, but as a title company, I don't care whether it says irrevocably or not. It just says authorized. I'm okay with that.
That's a Brian word. I'm going to defer to him.
Quite frankly, I don't care. And in fact, let's put it this way, if I receive money from the buyer, then the buyer, before I send the auction fee over to the seller, if the buyer says, wait a second, I just found out that darn seller committed fraud and lied to me, you better not release that auction fee check. What do I do? house is riddled with termites. Oh my God, don't, that, they knew about it. Don't give them the option fee check.
The contract says you give them the option fee.
Yeah.
The seller.
I mean, I think the word irrevocably makes it a lot stronger, but if you want to take it out, that's fine with me. 99.99% of the time, it's not going to be relevant. Okay? So go ahead and take it out.
One language that I like in the paragraph on the screen right now versus what was in the materials is the materials in the underlined sections stated buyer shall deliver the option fee to the title company. And then the language I'm worried about is at the same time buyer delivers the earnest money, where the one that we have on the screen here says within the same time. And so whatever final draft we have, I would suggest that we use that within the same time instead of saying at the same time. It's
You like this? You like this language here better, John?
correct.
Okay.
That's one comment I had in materials in advance, that at the same time just doesn't seem to have the same meaning as within the same time. It's within allows you to make two different checks if you want, or one check, depending on how we end up doing this. But I think that's it.
Hey, can I raise one other issue? And I don't know if this is relevant. Let's say earnest money is $5,000, option fee is $500, and the buyer sends me one check for $5,000. Is that earnest money, or is that option fee $500 and only $4,500 of the earnest money?
You are an attorney.
So, what are you going to do, Brian? Brian, what are you going to?
You could say payments received by escrow agent are applied first to earnest money and then to the option.
So you want to put that here?
Put it at the end. Yeah. Payments received by escrow agent will be applied first to earnest money and then to option.
That's in 4 or 5.
Well,
I have a question about termination options that isn't exactly what we're talking about, but the option fee, we've always had the choice in there whether it would be credited to the sales price at closing or not. And I've never seen a contract where it was checked that it wouldn't be. I'm wondering what the rationale was for putting the choice there, or why we would credit it. We do.
You know, there are, every once in a while on big deals, you'll see a seller, hey, if I'm giving you 30 days, I'm taking my house off the market for 30 days, and I want to have a substantial option fee that is not credited.
Tuesday, it was a lender that check will not be credited, the lender's personal house. That's the whole time I've ever seen it.
I just wondered why we had the choice, why we didn't just pick one and go with it. Because a lot of times they forget to check the box.
Yeah.
We think that may borrow a little bit from commercial. You know, in commercial, you do have deals where you have consideration paid to the seller for an extension or some right, and they will negotiate that it's not applied to the fixed price, just a deal point. So,
Hey, here's one instance where it does apply in short sale transactions. Sometimes the short sale lender says, don't you dare give that seller any money.
but I
That
agree.
was, that'd be taking out the option, wouldn't it?
Pardon me?
That'd be taking out the option period. Whether, it doesn't really have to do with whether it's credited at closing or not.
Well, if it's not credited sales price at closing, that's money that goes to the seller's pocket.
Yeah.
well, I
Yeah,
think,
but you do a short sale, that addendum that comes back from the lender eliminates the termination option anyway. They have what they call an inspection period, kind of like what we would do on an REO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you that it's very rare to see the no credit, but I have this fear that if we change too much, you're going to get backlash, and there'll be somebody or small group of people, a vocal minority, that will say, why did you change this? I need this, and blah, blah, blah. So I like Ron's philosophy of changing the status quo as little as possible.
Well, we're changing the status quo pretty dramatically.
Yeah. Well, changing the language as little as possible.
Yeah.
Really, I wouldn't ask for a change. I don't care. But if we were going to change it, I think we should do it all now and get it done.
Well, Charles, we have always had, the reason why we have the boxes is because it's always been there in this draft from the very beginning. But I wonder if it might be worth just putting it out there for comment, because it's going to have to go through a comment period, and we should receive some comments back on objecting to.
I think any chance we can take a checkbox or a blank out of the form is a positive.
Any brokers have any opinion or thoughts on this?
Get rid of the choice.
I think it's probably a good idea to take out those choices.
I would say,
Just pick one. And I can go either way, admit it or not, but pick one.
If 95% of the time they check the first box, then if they don't want to do it, they can put it in paragraph 11.
that's right.
Okay. Well, why don't we do we have consensus? SJ, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I have one thought, slightly different than my colleague, John George. I think just at the time is a little more plain English than within the time. I don't even really know what within the time means. And I just had a terrible blow up contract about this that we just resolved short of litigation that also resulted in a discipline, a complaint being filed, which pending about this very thing, about somebody dropping off at the title company currently as they should not have done. So, I mean, if it helps the process for the, as the way things happen in business, great, let's do it.
Okay,
I
SJ?
don't think they're good either, if, unless they're very clear. I mean,
You're very weary.
actually, I'd like my money right away.
SJ, I can explain within the time versus at the time, and it's really because of the following sentence, and that is that because it can come in at two different times, but it's timely as long as it comes in within that same time. So today I may pay the earnest money, tomorrow I may pay the option fee, or I could do them together. If I put at the same time, then it means I have to pay them together.
Well, then we just need to be sure and make that an education point and include that in the whatever info when we roll it out.
SJ, do you have any opinion or care on the second to last sentence of paragraph 23 on perhaps taking out the choice and just saying option fees are always credited to the sales price as per majority rule practice?
No.
Okay.
No, and here there is one query here, although I think if they're getting to the point of having a second option fee, they need to have counsel. But, that's something that also happens is we want to extend the period, the feasibility period, because we're not finished, because our whatever hasn't come back. And so sometimes, that original option fee will be treated one way, but the second option fee will not be. And then where does that go? Is that going back to the title company, or can they just pay the seller?
The way our amendment's worded right now, it says seller has received.
Yeah.
So I think it's paid to the seller, and I don't think there's inconsistency with those being different.
Yeah, in the amendment form, that has paid is pursuant to a Texas Supreme Court case that when you make an affirmative statement that it has been option fee has been paid, it is presumed as a matter of law that it has been paid.
In that amendment form, what is the definition of that additional payment? Is it called additional option fee? It's not defined as the same as this term, is it? Does it say additional option fee? It's a separate definitions, and I don't think we're going to get it confused. I don't think we would get it confused with the mechanism of the original paragraph.
I assume you point up to the amendment.
Yeah, see it.
If it gives a choice there, then maybe we leave the choice there.
For the additional option fee to be a choice that for them, you know, because sometimes it's a very minimal amount.
Where's that amendment?
I don't see it. Where is it?
I see there's the amendment.
Form?
It's under
No, it's
contract.
Okay.
Number 6, buyer has paid seller an additional option fee of blank for an extension of the unrestricted right to terminate the contract on or before 5 p.m. on blank. This additional option fee will or will not be credited to the sales price. Number 6.
So that preserves that flexibility for that thing, as SJ says.
Yeah, I think it's probably just an education thing to make sure that the agents understand that this original option fee is going to the title
Right.
company, and then anything after that's going straight to the seller.
And that seems to fit practice more. That seems more natural to me. Okay.
I do have a question. I've written a note that says, okay, well now do we need to come up with a form to submit to the title company if the seller wants their money? The seller's entitled to their option fee whenever they want it. How is that accomplished? And should we help facilitate that?
Just a simple email.
Yeah, I think an email.
Yeah.
Probably two.
Any written request will be honored, subject to good funds. I mean,
All right.
John,
Yeah.
do you accept any?
Yes.
Okay.
And for those who wouldn't they just make their own form?
Perhaps. You know, I think we're okay.
They do the release of earnest money.
I'll let TXR do that.
I mean, the problem with promulgating a form is that once you promulgate a form, then you make the agents that have to use it, and that it's very restrictive, and I'd like to give them more flexibility and just email me if they want.
Hey, so what did we decide on the amendment, paragraph 6? Are we leave it as is?
I think we just looked at it to make sure that it didn't present a conflict with what we're doing, but I'm fine with the way it's worded.
Okay, leave it as is.
I think.
We decide. Go ahead, Charlie. Ron.
I was just going to say, I think that could be one of those things that we just monitor, and if it looks like the trend is to where agents are wanting to send that money into the escrow agents, and the escrow agents start accepting the additional earnest money, option money, then we can always change the amendment form later.
Okay. You can see. Bo, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to offer a little perspective here that is probably kind of unique to my view of the industry. But first, let me say that I get what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to remove friction from the process, which I think is generally a good goal. But maybe want to offer some historical examples of removing friction from the process and seeing the results, the real live results of removing friction, because there are actual real results from removing friction from the process. And I get this is generally a big movement in real estate to remove friction. I went to Inman this summer, and that was a big part of what everybody was talking about, is how arcane the process is. We should be streamlining it, making it easier, which I get, totally get. But I want to offer a little opinion on that, and then maybe expand a little bit on why paragraph 23 is so important to me, what I do for agents and sellers, but a little perspective on removing friction. We have done that over the last 20 years. Real estate agents have become more proactive in helping their buyers and sellers, taken on more of a leadership role to offer more service over the last 20 or so years. We've also had technology advancements, DocuSign, stuff like that. The result of that removing of the friction has led to buyers participating in the process less and less and less and less and less and less. For instance, when I started deposing buyers 20-ish years ago, and I asked them a question, did you read the contract before you submitted it? The answer was almost universally yes. And they seemed offended that when I asked them, did you read the contract before you submitted it? When I take a buyer's deposition now, then did you read the contract before you submitted it? The answer is almost universally no. And they think I'm dumb for asking them, did you read the contract before you submitted it? It is almost flipped completely. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Agents are no longer sitting down with their buyers, go over the contract before it's submitted and explaining to them and making sure that it's being read. And DocuSign, they get an email, and I think most people, when they get a DocuSign, including me, they don't read the thing. They just click the button and get it finished. So I think it's a combination of things. So we have buyers that are participating less and less and less and less in the process, which I generally think is a bad thing, not a good thing. I think a frictionless real estate transaction is a bad idea. When I hear people saying we need to have a real estate transaction that takes 24 to 48 hours, that makes me want to, I will make a ton more money representing agents and sellers if we ever get to that point, but I think that's a bad idea. We shouldn't have real estate transactions that are so easy. So that's generally one of the problems that I have with this. But in regards to paragraph 23, when I defend a broker or a seller in a real estate claim, one of the very most important parts of defending a seller or a broker is the ability to explain to a jury and a judge that the buyer had a due diligence period. They had the right to inspect, they had the right to investigate the house. And one of the very first things I do in a buyer's deposition is I go to paragraph 23 and said, hey, did you read this? Were you aware that you had a time to do some due diligence? And they, for the most part, say yes. And I point out, were you aware that you paid for that right? Why did you pay for that? You know, you can imagine the kind of questions I ask. Why did you pay for this right to do due diligence? And I fear that by removing the friction of asking them to write a check and deliver it to a seller, that we're going to have buyers that truly don't understand that they even have an option period, don't understand the significance of the option period, and they're going to be able to point the finger at their agent and say, my agent didn't tell me I had an option period. I didn't even know what the option period was for. Now, I get that that's potentially, I may be over-dramatizing that. I get it. And I get that I have a different perspective on this than perhaps a lot of you do. But I have a philosophical issue with making this so easy for the buyer that they don't understand what they're doing and that there's no real ability to point the finger at them when they don't. which is frankly becoming more and more common, that they don't exercise any due diligence. So solving the problem of having them have to write an option fee check generally doesn't seem like a good idea to me.
Can I add something? I was just saying, it's still in two different places in the contract. It's going to refer to the earnest money separate from the option fee. So it still is two different amounts that they have to add together for the amount they made to the title company. So I think there is still some level of friction, if you will, of understanding that hopefully will prevent that issue.
And remember, with these payment programs like Zaka, you know, it really makes a difference that they can be combined into one payment.
Oh, I think you make a very good point, and I have talked to agents about, especially when it comes to when we discuss when a contract arises, communication of acceptance back to the other party, making sure that your client is invested in that decision, that has to be their decision and that you're not doing it for them. So I understand everything you're saying, but so that friction, as you call it, or I might call it, you're talking about a fight against insulating a buyer or a seller from the process. You don't want them to be insulated from the process. You want them to be part of the process. And the more work they have to do, the more they are part of the process. I love that idea. That's an important consideration. The only counter I might say to that is that if buyers are, and many buyers are involved in the process of writing the checks, but we're addressing a problem. The problem that we're addressing is that too many agents are not doing this right. They're either delivering it late, they're delivering it to a party other than the seller, it's not getting over there. And so the thing that we're trying to do by creating a little lubricant is to have less failure of the auction itself, which is one of the goals that you have in your trial. So I see two very important points in that.
I'm going to jump back in and, I sort of felt like this was a foregone conclusion, and as has sometimes occurred that the one or two litigators in the group standing with Bo here get run over on, I remember a certain amendment in my voice here, but I actually agree with Bo. I don't like this. I'm trying to deal with a bad situation is the way I'm looking at this. I don't like this at all. And that's why I keep asking, how does the seller get their money? And so I'm standing with Bo. I hate this thing. And if y'all are going to cram it down, then we'll deal with it. But I hate it. That is all.
But you hate it for a different reason than Bo. It sounds like you're more worried about delivery of the money to the seller. Bo's more worried about the involvement of the parties.
No, exactly the same reason. And Bo mentioned that the seller getting a check. I mean, he's going to say, what am I getting this check for? Well, it's because you've got an option. These guys can walk away in the next 10 days. Okay. No, I think Bo and I, if you could see me, I'm doing that thing where you do the eyes together. Why my camera's not working?
As somebody with a foot in both ponds still doing litigation in the title company, I see your point, Bo, and I think that leads into what our subcommittee was doing in terms of the seller's disclosures in paragraph 7, is calling it out. The client I don't think that this paragraph bleeds too much over into bringing a buyer into the process. Normally they write 2 checks and they're done. I just don't think frankly there's much of a discussion there that will change with these changes here. I do agree with your point, and the more we can get the agent to have that conversation with the buyer or seller, depending on what the issue is, the better. That's better for the industry, better for the consumers, and sometimes can be a little concerning for the agents when it bleeds over legal issues. But I don't don't know if this is a vehicle in which to bring out that discussion. That maybe, I like that general thought to keep in mind in these meetings as we make changes, because that definitely is better for the consumer at the end of the day. But I just don't think, practically speaking, this change makes that difference in bringing that buyer into the conversation.
So
But I
this
think
is
it's a good point to keep in mind.
Charles, I just want to say, my opinion hasn't changed. That, I mean, at the last meeting, I was saying the same thing that Bo and SJ are saying. But it seemed that the consensus was we needed to do this based on demand. So that's what I've been working towards. But yeah, if the bottom line is we don't have to do anything, then that's what I would vote for. I think that we've been educating them to do it this way for this long, and they're either educated or they're not. And if we make this change, now we're starting over on an education. In 20 years, they didn't, I mean, I just think we're switching out our problems. I don't think that this gets us anywhere positive, other than it shows that we are reacting to what they think they want.
We are reacting to something that is happening on the ground right now.
Because they want to make a change and not follow the rules, and I don't see that.
They don't know the rules. They don't care about the rules.
So what makes you think that they're going to learn the rules or care about the rules once we've changed them to something else?
A little different perspective there. It's hard as the consumer at the end. If these agents, after all this time, are not educated enough where to bring the option button, it's really harming the consumer by not having the option at the end of the day. And it may be by location. You know, our city offices don't have this issue quite as much as our rural ones, and this is what we're seeing. And but it definitely is a big problem. And I think on the title company side, we see it a lot because we're the ones getting it. And even if we tell the agent right there, we can't accept it, you have to go deliver it to the seller, they have to, like, guys, I don't want to do that. And I agree, it's completely an education issue, but it's happening.
Well, John, if that's the issue we're trying to fix, couldn't we address it by putting a sentence in here that says title company cannot accept an option fee, and if they do, the buyer doesn't have an option fee?
That they cannot accept.
Well, and this is not precise language, but if that's the issue we're trying to solve, couldn't we just add a sentence here that says option fee, if not delivered directly to seller, is not effective and there's no option fee?
The only
deliver
two agents on the same day, we made a Facebook post about this issue, about we cannot accept it as a title company. And two agents on the same day, I kid you not, said, oh yeah, I saw your post, but here's the option check. And it boggles my mind that these agencies aren't doing it, and the title companies that aren't pushing them to meet their contractual obligations. It's a persistent issue. And
what you say actually increases the problem. The fact is that delivery to the title company right now does not constitute delivery of the option fee check.
Well, I hear you. I agree with that, and I do think there's a short-term issue that would cause, but I think it's a better long-term fix. We'd have to do some education. But I get, hey guys, I get the issue. Most of you don't know, but my wife owns and operates multiple title companies. My foot's in both doors too. I get it.
I think one thing we're not talking about is the future. I think one of the reasons we decided to look at this was the fact of electronic wiring and how we're going to be doing real estate in the future. Having a paper check from a checkbook at a bank is going quickly out of style, out of date. The young folks don't even have checking accounts. I think we're doing this because we're trying to stay relevant with how we're going to be doing real estate in the future.
I want to add on to that because we're talking about a practice that in its traditional model, not only is the check written, but there is someone gets in a car and drives to a location to a seller or a seller representative and appears in person. And as we've seen, that's That's currently illegal in many jurisdictions and locations. Now, even if these stay-at-home orders get lifted, I'm not convinced that we're not going to have to battle another virus and another wave of stay-at-home orders. I like the idea of streamlining this process to go from 2 separate deliveries to 2 locations physically to 1 electronic delivery. I think that's why I'm a strong proponent.
I agree.
I agree also, and I think even whether or not you're required to stay at home or not, I think people are realizing, oh, some of these things we can do electronically. Why haven't we been doing it this way all along? I just think, I agree, and I think that might have been, Brian, what you were referring to. We've got it on the ground right now. I mean, this is something that people are going to be wanting even more now that they see how easy it is to make it work.
And I seriously say this with all due respect to FJ and Mo. I'm going to invoke the 95% rule, and that is a litigator will see maybe 2% of the deals with problems, and that appears to be magnified as being relevant, but 95% plus of this change to paragraph 23 will make a material difference in transactions. It will make.
I think it'll make it better because we'll have very accurate documentation as to when the option was delivered, and it will protect both parties, depending on who's doing what, versus just an agent randomly dropping a check off at a real estate office and the gal at the front desk, forgets or loses it, or there's so much that goes on in that arena. This is going to be more accurate documentation of options.
Ron or Charlie, do you have anything you want to add to this talk?
No, I think everything's been said.
Oh, you want to go, Ron?
No, go ahead.
I was very much against combining them at one time. I have since been reassured of the ability of the seller to get theirs. And I'm dealing with it every day with I do a lot more representation of sellers, and I have a lot of agents that it's so much simpler for them to get it to the title company. And I know that's silly, but I don't see an increase in problems there. I think that we're being pretty clear with the buyers about the option period is probably the thing that we explain to buyers better than anything else in the contract, I believe. And so I think we should go forward with having it paid to the title company. I think it's a good idea.
I agree.
Ron?
No, sir. I think everything's been said well.
Okay. I think I'd like to have an action item on this. And if there are people that are opposed to this, let your vote and your count and your voice be heard so that you can, if there's something that passes over your objection, you can say, I didn't have anything to do with that. But I'd like to give this hard work some effect and throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. This is just a proposal, and we're going to come back and visit it. And if we want to pull it, at the next meeting because of vociferous dissent or legal things we didn't think of, we have that right to do that. So if someone wants to make a motion, I'm willing to move it along.
Well, I will move that we adopt the revision to paragraph 23 with the change as shown on the screen currently, where paragraph 5 is split into paragraph 5A and 5B, and also that we make the corresponding change in paragraph 18.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded. Is there any further discussion? We did spend a lot of time on this. Does anybody want to say anything before we call for a vote? Okay. see how we're gonna do this. I'm just gonna go, do you wanna, Vanessa, do you have any guidance for us? Do we just wanna say hi and listen?
Just take a roll call if you want. If you want me to do that, I can do that real quick.
You do that.
Okay.
For us.
John George.
Yes.
O. Blackburn.
No.
Charlie Still.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
SJ.
No.
Charles Kramer.
Yes.
Brian Watts.
Yes.
Lee York.
No.
Terry.
Yes.
Greg Glenn.
Yes.
And me, I'll vote yes.
Fred?
Oh, and Fred, are you here, Fred? Okay, Fred's not here.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Do you vote yes, Fred?
Vote no, Fred. Vote no.
No lobbying.
Is it Underwood?
Don't listen to those litigators.
All right, well,
Recap, I had a doorbell. What just happened?
We passed it unanimously.
I think there were 3 no's, is that right?
3 no's.
Correct.
I think we could use, if we wanted to, we could use the chat function to vote. Might be a little more efficient.
Really? Okay.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so we've made that decision and we're gonna move forward with proposing that language to the,
Point of order, I don't think we got Fred's vote, did we? Did you
Fred?
vote yes?
okay, I wanna hear a yes or no from Fred.
It says he's left.
Well, it says his microphone is not on. We might count that as an abstention.
Right. Well,
All right. Well, I think,
Try again.
okay, Fred?
All right. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, nothing. Okay.
So do you know what we're seeking from you? You know, we just had an action item that we voted on. And we were wanting to know your vote. Do you need a recap? All right, let the record reflect there are some technology difficulties with his microphone. I just don't know what's happening.
He's off the list again.
Okay. Well, we'll move on. Thank you, everybody, for actively discussing this. And I'm sure we're going to talk about it at the next meeting. Let's go to the Smart Home Technology Working Group, who's in that group.
Mr. Chairman, would it be all right if we took a 2-minute break before we did that?
That's fine. Let's reconvene at 10:25. If we could, everybody thinks we do what we need to do, that's fine with me.
Thank you.
Option fee.
Charlie, your feed was the most interesting. It's much better now, but early on when people were talking, I don't know what it was. It sounded like you had somebody vacuuming all around you. So,
No, Ron, Cherry was the third member of that working group. I looked at the notes.
Okay.
Let's go back.
who's on this one? The smart.
Looking that up right now. So this is Smart Home. Smart Home. I know. No, Lee was. I'll look it up.
I know that Brian was.
Smart Home. Lee was on this one. It was Lee, Ron, and Brian.
Yeah.
Lee, Ron, and Brian.
I think on the termination, I think it was Brian, me, and
It was the person not present.
Lori. Okay.
if you need.
Oh, I think I'm good, yeah, right now. Let's try to get the,
I'm back. Oh, you look so relaxed when you're talking. You have very focused thoughts, but you're like this. It's great.
This is like a dentist chair. I stole my son's pillow from his gaming chair so I can lean back and kind of relax.
That's nice.
Okay. Charles,
Yes, ma'am.
do you know what page of the agenda our stuff from the work group is?
The start pages, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I think we're gonna go straight to the contract and look at the changed language in certain sections. I think that our committee will guide us to that. There are no
I'm on the committee, and I was looking for the work.
well, let's see. I'm gonna work, are we talking about it? That may help me, my color copy.
Stuff we did, is it paragraph 4 and then an addendum? Is that what we did?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
no, that was the,
About the disclosure?
no, that was the lease. That was the lease, Lee.
Yeah, technology working group, let's see where that is. That is not the new lease section.
Oh, no, that was we put it in paragraph
We modified it.
10 on delivery.
Hey,
Possession.
Charles, we probably want to call back the meeting to order if you're going to start talking.
Yeah, well, golly.
No, we don't have everybody. Hey, I do have a question while we're waiting.
Yeah.
Has anyone heard anything about when the governor is having his press conference today?
Noon.
Noon? Okay. There's something we're waiting on pins and needles, and that is that there's a proposal for an emergency order to allow notaries to be done by video chat.
That's already been approved.
No, this is a different one.
This is a different one. That one was with respect to estate planning.
Oh, you're right.
So,
You're right.
And one of the documents is the statutory durable power of attorney, but the problem is that the way that they did it, it's not entirely clear that that power of attorney could be recorded, and that's
Yeah, it can.
that's necessary to be able to use it in a real estate transaction.
Right.
Okay. Let's see who's here. Terry looks like he's in place. She's in place. Amy is not. Lee is here. Brian's here. Charlie's messing around. Bo is in place.
Are we gonna break? Were you asking Brian if we could break to watch the press conference? I would like to, honestly.
I don't care. I mean, let's see how much we get done. We've been in this.
Can we stream it here?
Ah, there you go.
I don't know that we have a quorum yet.
We have an hour and a half to figure out the technology so that we can stream it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
I would like to note that I am no longer Monica Woodrock.
let's take a look. Hey, you got a pick. Very
I
good.
think I went to study. And I found it. Wearing my Trojan shirt here.
Did you go to university? Or you got a kid that went there?
No, I went to SC undergrad, and then I went to a real football school, Baylor.
All right. Well, Greg, I don't know where you went. Let's see. And Ron, you're like
Washington received, so.
well,
So this item on the
it looks
agenda
like
is
I have
called
enough
a
of a
smart
quorum to.
What's the name of this task force?
Otherwise. All right. So the next item is to discuss the fine work of the Smart Home Technology Working Subcommittee. And who was on that committee? It was Lee, is that right?
When, I think it was me and Brian and Ron.
Okay. So who would like to lead the discussion of what was changed? And we'll use the 1 to 4 family as a guide as well, since the change was mirrored across many contracts. Who would like to talk?
I can just lay it out real quick. You'll see on the screen the final conclusions there about what to do. We went around and around with different approaches in trying to do things, and I won't go through the whole pain of that discussion because literally we went 360 at least 2 different times, and we landed up on a simple approach where we modify paragraph 2C as you see in accessories, and add the word security systems that are not fixtures as accessory to the property, and we add the word controls with a little bit better definition. It says includes the seller's rights to hardware, software applications used to access and control the improvements to the accessories. So essentially what we're doing is just saying that those are now accessories and tried to be broad enough to pick those up. And then going into paragraph 10 and adding a smart device statement there as trying to define smart device there, as you can see, that it's any device that connects to the internet to enable remote use, monitoring, or management of those items there, the property, the non-realty items and any addendum, and any fixture. And then it says that the seller is going to deliver the access codes, usernames, passwords, those kinds of things upon closing, and then terminate and remove those access and connections accordingly. So that's it in just a nutshell. That's pretty much, I suspect, what's happening out in the marketplace anyway, and that's what we tried to reflect.
This is probably, go ahead, Charlie, I want you to talk. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I thought it covered it real succinctly.
My congratulations are off to the committee. I'm really pleased with this language and like it and think it's tight. I have one question, and it's probably because I'm just thinking too much like a lawyer, and this is probably not a reasonable reading of the contract, but in paragraph 2C, seller's rights to hardware, does that mean that I got to hand over my iPhone if that's the hardware that controls this stuff? That's probably not a reasonable interpretation. I guess you guys mean hardware that is located in or on the property?
Yes, that's what we mean.
Okay.
That's a good point, though.
Maybe garage door opener,
Yeah.
but no, not your cell phone.
Okay.
That's why you have the option to clear it. Or what, the responsibility, excuse me, it's not an option.
Yeah.
Do you want to add something like this? I mean, it's a good,
I really don't. In my mind, Ron, I think that's not a fair reading. I just noticed it, but that's not a reasonable interpretation of that phrase. I don't think we need to worry about it.
But where do we use the word controls? We define the term.
right here.
Yeah. It started off with garage door openers, went to exit gates, and then we have other remotes or ceiling fans, and then, as we automate our house with these remote controls that are not real estate, we're trying to bring in everything. So.
What about, this is just from not having a big technology background. I'm thinking of the situation where you have an app or software that's on your phone that you may have paid something for. Let's say it's not a free app, but a $100 app to control some device. And you cannot transfer that over to the buyer. Meaning, it's a one license for you, the person that bought it, that can't transfer over. And I'm trying to articulate this, but my gut's telling me something with just having that word software in there. The controls includes the seller's rights to software, and then down below, in C1, having to written access to passwords. What if the access code is like an email address that can't be changed? I have several accounts that the username can't be changed from my email, and if I have to get that up with, I guess you can create a new password to deliver it. Those are just a couple of my initial kind of concerns. I'm interested to see if that was discussed. And
so I don't think the issue about not being able to change email came up, John. I don't remember that conversation. I'm not aware of that. Is that a situation that happens in some of these devices?
I don't have too many smart devices. I'm a little behind the times on that, but I know I have a lot of accounts with various things for the law firm and my business that I can't change, that I've gone to try. That it is what it is from when I started, and it lets me change the password but not the user. And it may be not a big issue. I just haven't dealt with the smart technology enough to know if it is or isn't.
John or Ron, what if we added the word in between sellers and rights? What if we added the word transferable, so that things the seller doesn't have a right to transfer aren't required? Does that solve that?
It solves that in my mind initially. My initial thought is that make that clear. Again, not knowing if it's a big enough issue to warrant adding a word or not, but that would seem to clear it up to me.
So you
I also like to say,
where's he talking
on further review, I have concerns about that use of the word hardware in the definition of controls. Because my phone, I can open and close my garage door.
So right here. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No. Yeah, okay, transferable rights. I just say software and applications. I don't think you need to say hardware. Because, first of all, controls includes is not a limiting term. It's just,
What about the Nest thermostat? Is that hardware that we want to hand over to a buyer? I would think so.
Would that include accessories somehow?
how about if we say hardware used solely for access, controlling, improvement, or accessories?
Sure.
The transferable rights to software and applications used to access and control improvements or accessories, and hardware used exclusively to access and control.
Yeah.
I thought this whole thing started with the Nest thermostat. We don't want to leave that out.
How about the manufacturer's
I agree.
hardware?
Yeah, and I think the Nest itself is a hardware.
Well, that hardware exclusively for use to control that included, right?
Yeah.
I think
Brian, I don't think, if a buyer says to a seller, hand me your iPhone, I get it, the seller's gonna laugh and walk off, and I don't think you're gonna see litigation over that. I don't think that's, I thought about that same thing myself, but I don't think that's a rational reading of hardware.
Adding manufacturers, I think that does.
Okay.
I think it'll be a less than 5% thing.
Me too.
Well, it has to be the manufacturer of the control for the garage door, for the entry gate, and for the improvements and accessories. So I think it has to be tied to that.
The one thing that comes to mind when I hear hardware is like maybe a server or something for a security system, a high-end security system, which won't be in too many houses to that level, but that's the only thing that comes immediately to mind that would fall into that category that may not be addressed elsewhere.
Well, I'm dealing with a new house now. Not mine, but it's got like an iPad that controls everything. It's got security on it. It's got the garage door. It's got the ACs. It's got everything. And it's obviously that goes with it.
Well, but if that particular system is manufactured by Nest or whatever, and you got an app on your iPad, then that's not Nest's iPad. That's not the manufacturer's hardware.
No, it is. It's not an iPad. It is a pad that belongs to the system that came with the house.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
And it's manufacturer's hardware, and in that thing, it includes a security system that is not by the same people that created the pad, and it also the air conditioning, HVAC connects to that, the music, the TV, the audio, everything, the lights, everything. It is.
That reminds me of another thing when I first got the house I'm in now. It was the invisible fence, the controller for that. They left the fence itself, but took the box that the power control, and that didn't make us happy. But I think this would make that fall within the items that need to convey.
I think this will help. Not catch everything.
I just added garage doors and entry gates there to mirror the prior sentence. That way I think it ties it better to whatever improvement or accessory that we're talking about.
Well, isn't accessory itself a definition that includes garage doors and entry gates?
Right at the top, yeah. It also includes the window air conditioning, the draperies, the window shades, if you have controls for those.
Fireplace,
Right.
artificial fireplace, log. The fireplace is controlled by this thing too.
Yep. No, SJ, that's something that I would think should go to the buyer.
Well, and you know what? In this, I'm in a rental house right now, and every bedroom on the wall and the light fixture has a little control that you pop off for the fan and the light. You can put it next to your bed.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do the clap on, clap off.
Any other?
Somebody who's watching are going, what?
We could make it simpler. Why don't we on the line that starts with controls for, delete garage door entry gate and just say controls for improvements and accessories.
Yeah, because
the garage door and entry gate are improvements for accessories.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Less is better.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to get credit for that.
The other one concern I want to have with the use of the manufacturer's hardware. What if you replace the original manufacturer's hardware with something on, a secondary device or you could have a pad that controls it from the manufacturer, but then you would have got an upgraded pad, and you may no longer have the old one. Are we limiting it too much by adding manufacturers in there in that case?
5%.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, hold on.
what do you propose, John, instead?
Well, it's more not having an alternative that's better as opposed to whether we need it. And I raised it just because I'm thinking of going back to this invisible fence, the control that was on it was not the original one. It went and bought a secondary power control that wasn't the manufacturer's. It was a third party company. And it may be, again,
Right, and that's the same that.
I can see it being an issue. Potentially.
So committee, if we remove Ron's recent addition of the manufacturers, what is the problem with just having the original language?
My iPhone fits under its
Yeah, it
control.
does. But do you really think that's going to be a problem where sellers lose their iPhones to buyers?
No,
You're right.
anyone would expect that.
Yeah. No seller's going to hand over their iPhone and go, well, look, Star Trek says that, I guess you get it there.
What if we said hardware, software, and applications used solely to access and control improvement services?
Well, then we do the opposite, because you do use your iPhone and it has all those apps on it.
So that hardware not go.
I think I'm fine with solely.
Ryan's trying to make the point you use for something else.
Well,
The phone's not going to, phone isn't going, so.
but I think John raises that good question because, for example, you can use the Alexa app to control devices that are not produced by Amazon.
Correct. Aftermarket products, aftermarket electronics.
Right, and so they interchange
My
now.
Alexa good to go?
Right, so that's the question would be, if we don't put in the manufacturer's software, then I think you have all this, Apple does the same thing, your Apple Home, all those kinds of things allow you to control those devices.
How about if we put right in front of the word hardware, if we say improvement for accessory hardware? So it's cutting out things like an Alexa.
Well, using your
Improvement
example,
or accessory.
It already says that at the end of the sentence.
Right, so if we add back the manufacturers, then it's limited. What I'm obligated to do is to pass that on, and I think it may be the 5% rule if I go and buy a generic garage door opener because I lost my original one.
let me ask you a question.
Ron, if you take the comma out after software, and I'm intentionally removing an Oxford comma to change the meaning, so the last part of the sentence would now say software and applications used to access and control the improvements of accessories. And right now, all it's talking about is applications used to access and control the improvements of accessories. I think we all think we know what we're talking about, but the language that modifies now it's only the software and applications used to. Now we've got it separated that it's manufacturer's hardware, software and applications used to access and control the improvements or accessories. I don't even know if we need manufacturer's hardware now.
Well, I think we do because
I didn't say manufacturers, actually. I said improvement and accessories hardware. Put manufacturers back in there.
well, the reason why I do that is because of the generic software that overlays a lot of the manufacturer's software or applications that
Yes.
come. And we don't want to convey,
Yes,
we
and
don't,
if it is, then it needs to go. I mean, just as
no, we wouldn't want
John's
that.
example about the,
I don't think we would
Yeah,
want
we
that to
do.
go.
we want the aftermarket garage door opener to go. We want the aftermarket electric fence, invisible fence to go. We want that pad that controls the whole house, not just the light to go. And so I didn't want the manufacturers, I wanted improvement in accessories hardware.
One overlying point is
Hardware, maybe.
all these items can be excluded. So if we're clear in what goes, I think is what we're aiming at accomplishing here. And then, of course, they can exclude anything they want. Just making sure we're not creating ambiguity in the language that we utilize.
You're right. Paragraph D gives the out. If you want to knock out some of that paragraph C, you use paragraph D. Good point. Let me ask a question. What about an Apple TV device? Is that under this current definition? Does that have to stay with the house?
What is a device? The Apple TV, or is that something else?
Yeah, the little black. There's like 4 generations. So I think we're now on 4K Apple TV, which is a pretty cool streaming device that streams content to your TV. Pretty popular sort of thing.
No, it's no, because it's not a fixture and it's not a defined accessory.
Not a security system.
Does it belong to you, or does it belong to Apple?
Well, it belongs to you. You buy it for about $100. So I want to make sure that doesn't get included. Okay.
It's the same thing with all the Google TV and the Amazon TV. It's all the same. I don't think that picks it up. But what I was worried about is the these overlaying applications and devices that allow you to interact with the existing software and applications from the manufacturer to control the devices. If we don't limit it to the manufacturers, then are you picking up these other things that are connected to it simply because what you're doing is that you're assembling those all under one application for the convenience of the owner, and that is your own device.
But if it's your own device, but it maybe either the word transferable takes care of that, or Brian's suggestion of solely. But if it's something that is only used with the house that you're selling, then why wouldn't those additional things that you've acquired subsequent to the device not go to the buyer?
Can you take your Apple box to the next house?
Yes.
Yes, I don't think that's an issue. But Ron's got a concern that I'm trying to tease out and understand. I tend to agree with SJ that seems like the kind of thing that a buyer would be deserving of.
Okay.
Can I give this thought? I think we all have consensus on the phrase software and applications used to access and control the improvements or accessories. All right?
Yes.
So what if we have that as a standalone phrase, and then say, after what we have written here, say, comma, and transferable rights to hardware used solely to access and control the improvements or accessories.
I'd like to make a comment. Can you hear me?
Sure. And we can see you.
Good. I had to restart the program because the other one was messing up. Maybe it was the wireless connection. But obviously, you've talked on the Apple box. I bought one for my daughter, and as she moves, she takes it with her. And I want to address maybe the Alexa. See, the way the language is reading right now, it's seller's transferable rights, let's say to the Alexa. So shouldn't there be something seller's approved transfer, or something that the seller agrees to transfer?
Well, Fred, do we take care of an Alexa can be used for many things. So Brian has just, as you were talking, and Ron typed in this additional language, maybe that takes care of your Alexa concern.
Okay.
Alexa is not hardware used solely to control. You can use that for a variety of things. So I think that lets the seller port and take with them the Alexa going, this isn't dedicated to the house. This is my Alexa. And although it does control this stuff, it's not, it's for a lot of things. So I think that language is important, and I think that helps you.
We should do here.
Solely to control.
I think what we need to do here
Not
is,
fit in that definition, or a Google whatever bit, or whatever those things are. Yeah, I like that change. Lee, do I hear dog noises?
No, actually, no. You might have been typing. You know, I can't get to the nail salon, so you're probably clicking a little.
All right. Committee, take a look at this change, and Ron, do you have any thoughts?
now the only other thing I thought is, should you say the bring up number 2 is 1 to where you say hardware used solely to control the improvements in device, and then say 2, software and applications to control the hardware? Because then you're talking about controlling the hardware and not the improvements.
You want to add that? Well, I mean, it could be either. It could be improvements, accessories, or hardware. I mean,
yeah.
Because.
All right, I'm okay with that. That's
yeah.
I'm picking it. I'm picking at it.
Okay.
I can pick later. I can pick later. We have another meeting.
In front of improvements or accessories in the 2 places, you could take out the word
This one?
and then also in 2I.
Save and space, way to go.
Okay.
Can I give one last thought? I mean, I like this change in C. Are we finished with C, accessories?
I am.
Yes.
On the paragraph 10C change, and I'm just throwing this one out, is there any value in putting in bold at the end of this, buyers are advised to change passwords once they take possession?
Their responsibility to know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't warn them about all the other stuff.
Yeah, I guess we don't say change the locks on your house.
No, it doesn't. That's a good point.
I do.
We gotta look at them for the agents to do.
Well, does anybody have any
We
more?
tell them to get a lawyer.
Okay. Does anybody have any more drafting fine tunings or questions or thoughts or hypotheticals they want to throw out? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to move that we accept this as changed. If anyone wants to- Okay, I hear a motion by Lee, and the second by anybody?
Second. I second.
Second by Fred. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
I'm just leaving the vote, and I thought I got it in first.
All right, well, a joint motion by Lee and Charlie, seconded by Fred. Are we gonna use the chat thing, or are we gonna have Ron call roll again?
Why don't you just ask for any negative votes?
Is anybody opposed to this motion? Please say so by affirmative voice. All right, then the motion carries as a unanimous vote of the committee. And we'll move on.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Sure, Fred.
Obviously, I've been on Zoom now with some other meetings, and they use the chat to be able to record. And so my question is, this session is being recorded. Does it also record the vote, whether we agree or not agree, in some way, form, or fashion besides just the recording, or is chat something that you don't need, or?
I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that the prior vote, we couldn't get you in on did have some strong dissent and recorded dissent and no votes. We had at least 3 no votes. So, you know, we're keeping track of the notes, I think.
All right. Is the chat recorded? You don't know that answer?
I don't.
Okay.
I can speak to that.
Thank you.
I think the chat goes away, which is why I prefer a vote that's done orally the way we're doing it, because we are recording it and that's all we'll need for this.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
And we're going to have minutes too, like we do for a regular meeting.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. So fine work, folks. Again, my thanks to Lee, Brian, and Ron for excellent work. And lastly, Sellers Disclosure Paragraph Working Group. Who was in this group?
I was.
Terry. And who else? And Brian. Brian, you've been a busy boy.
No,
Bo.
I wasn't.
Bo was.
You weren't?
Bo was.
By the way,
I was. We do have one other working group, and that's the lease working group.
Yeah.
But that was received last time.
No, I don't think so.
I think we changed it again.
We'll go over that.
Huh.
Definitely go over that. So in the disclosure paragraph, we have Terry and Bo, and anyone else?
And me, John.
John.
It was John, Bo, Ron, and Terry. John, Bo, Ron, and Terry.
Okay, thank you.
And is this in the supplementary materials that we just got?
Yes, I believe it is. So you can pull up the most recent thing from Amber, or maybe they can post it. Oh, it's up there. Is that what we're looking at right there?
Yeah.
Okay. So someone take the floor.
You want to take it, Bo?
You got it.
Brilliant idea that was new and fresh that we adopted. So I vote for Ron to take the lead on this one.
So, as you know, last time the committee had previously come up with this kind of addendum, and the question was how to incorporate that back into the form. And the problem was the flow of the notice, because ideally it's supposed to come before the contract. And if the buyer is making the offer but doesn't know the answers to the questions, how does he go about getting that information from the seller before he makes his offer? And it was raising some issues. So what we did is we just took the same paragraph out of the seller's disclosure notice and essentially adopted that same format. So you check the appropriate box and follow the same procedure, and then the seller is either giving you that land disclosure notice in advance, or he has a certain amount of time to give it to you, or under number 3, the parties simply agree that they're not going to worry about it and not use it. And again, this would apply just to the vacant land form, the farm and ranch form, and the 2 new home forms.
Further background, just to recenter the discussion, was originally the thought was that agents are merely overlooking this provision within the contract, and we were looking at how to make it meaningful and not just ignored, and look at different ways of check boxes, putting the notice completely within the contract or using a separate addendum. In this kind of 2-step approach, we thought Ron had a great idea of having the same procedure that the agents are already used to in copying it from the seller's disclosure notice section. And then having this separate addendum that can be attached where it's the actual client filling it out and not the agent trying to check boxes or insert something when they shouldn't into the contract itself. We're trying to vary those concerns at the same time of giving meaning to the contract. There was a lot of debate last time on whether we actually needed these disclosures. Depending on the contract, there's 5 or 6 different disclosures, and I think we all came around to yes, these are good disclosures that should be made. And so with that, we ended up with this one.
And land disclosure notice can be used at the time of the listing. So there's some education there for the agents to get this cleared up at the front.
one question on the paragraph, the box 3 in this, and focusing on the word required, which when I read that as a lawyer, like, well, is there some law that, it sounds like the intent of free is that the parties have agreed not to do that rather than required. Is that what you're trying to say, is we just agreed not to do it? That's
Right.
all that choice it is?
Right.
That is, and that's a good point. And my mind immediately goes to the HOA addendum.
Yeah.
Look at the language that was used there when you do not have to provide the subdivision. I'm not sure off the top of my head exactly how that reads.
Look,
We lost the update there that you had, but could we just put in the beginning of that where it says land disclosure, could we put in parens, optional or something like that for voluntary use?
yeah. Don's hunting down some similar language to see.
I was going to
how
pull
to address
up that HOA form that John mentioned.
Buyer does not require the delivery of the subdivision information. So you could have that third option be very similar to that and say buyer does not require delivery of the land notice.
I think that's a good change.
Yeah, I do too. But can we also put up there in the land notice that it's not mandatory?
Why
I
do
don't
you
like
want
saying not mandatory, but.
Okay.
optional.
I think we need to. 3 is,
would that lead agents to not check any of the boxes?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. If we put optional, like.
I want them to check 1, 2, or 3. I want them to at least, if they want to not do it, we have a nice, clean, plain language choice. 3.
How about
Yeah, I like
up there in the lead-in where it says land disclosure notice, we in parens or in front of the check the one box only paren, in the beginning of that, put, land disclosure notice is optional, but you must check one box below.
why do we need to say that it's optional if we're making it optional with the choice?
But
I mean, isn't that a legal?
we are making,
the word.
I think it's very- And what I really like, how 1 and 2 mirror exactly the seller's disclosure in the single family form so that it looks and sounds just like that. So it tells the agents how to work it. It just gives them that third box. that they
yeah,
don't-
and which that is mandatory. And that's the only reason, and I guess, an answer to the question. I just don't, it doesn't feel, it looks like we're making it mandatory by sticking it in here. I didn't get any written, but as you know, I'm fairly close contact with a bunch of ranch brokers.
Yep.
A firm with about 30 of them now, and they were pitching a fit to hear that there was going to be this land disclosure notice.
Well, remember that.
One more thing we have to do. I hate that, and I'm like, not mandatory. Well, you stick it in there, people are going to think it's mandatory.
It's mandatory right now, though. In the contract, there's no, it's unless otherwise noted, the seller is making this representation. So this originally started, how do we get that meaning and purpose? And the first step was, do we need them to begin with? We decided, yes, we do. And so that continued with the mandatory nature of these disclosures in these forms.
Well, I disagree that the notice was mandatory. I agree that our contract form has it in there. But the seller's disclosure notice, as we all know and have said, but let's reiterate we're out here on the interweb public, TREC's position has always been to follow the statutory requirement of the property code, section 5.008, and never more than that. Although we've allowed our realtor boards and the former Texas Association Realtors, now Texas Realtors, promulgate a form that is more extensive. But TREC has always stayed with statutory language of 5.008, which has,
Gonna apply.
what the legislature has decreed will be disclosed, but not all of the additional handy disclosures that over time the realtors boards and commercial people have decided are good things to do.
Well, SJ,
Yes, land disclosure notice. Go ahead.
my recollection is that most of these items here in the notice, and that's why they were added to the form, actually came as a result of cases that says if you're aware of those items on your land, then you have to disclose them. So
Right, I agree, and those all came because of cases, and so did all the additional ones on the TAR filters form. I agree, and I don't think they're a bad thing, but the language of the seller disclosure statute, 5.008, sets out who is required to do it and who is not. And generally speaking, for the legislature, I'm not saying we're stuck with that, but only if there's a residential dwelling on the property with value of more than 10% would a ranch property or a commercial property be required to include these notices. I'm okay with this. I think it's good, but I also don't, I for sure like choice as an option there, because somebody may not want to do it at all. And I just am concerned about the only place that it looks like it's a choice is in our small, I don't remember if it's 1 or 3, 1 or 3 or C, in our new.
Yes.
Yeah, as a lawyer, if I see somebody has used this and then they didn't check off, then they didn't, it's available to them and they didn't use it, and they should have used it, and of course I'm gonna be all over them.
Can I ask this first, on the farm and ranch contract, is there agreement that there may be situations in a farm and ranch contract where 5.008 may apply? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, right now, in the farm and ranch contract, paragraph 7B is the 5.008 seller's disclosure notice. And then the other notices are contained in paragraph H. So what if we kept 7B the way it is with respect to 5.008? And then we change, this change that we're making is H, land disclosure notice. And for the farm and ranch, we would call it optional land disclosure notice.
That's what I would say.
I think that.
I don't know, or land disclosure notice.
Additional.
Maybe make the optional land disclosure notice, and then stick the optional behind it. But I'm not trying to discourage use of it at all, but just.
Brian, I think it's a very good idea.
I don't want to miss the
So keep 7B the way it is, 5.008. And H is, or additional optional disclosures.
Committee members, in case you want to go to your packet, this is page 56 of 92.
Additional disclosures, and stick the optional at the end of the statement.
Land disclosure dash optional.
Additional land disclosures
Gas.
and then in the parens, put,
Well, we already have a couple parents there.
you gonna let me finish? Additional land disclosure notice, and then where it starts at the check one box only, before the word check, put land notice is optional, check one box only.
To me, that says that an agent is free not to check any boxes.
Amen.
I don't
I
like
think
that.
now, I think if you put it there, nobody's going to use it.
I like the idea of if we're adding optional in, putting it where we have the additional right now. The sentiment, and we spent a lot of time debating this, whether we wanted to keep this in or just get rid of it completely. So on the subcommittee, I think our last meeting, we all went through that as well. We came to the fact that we want to keep it. But I just struggle with the fact that we follow what the legislature says about 008. But what's the thought again on the additional? To me, is that surplusage, do we really need? Is it because of the other disclosures in paragraph 7 that we're adding additional there? So,
And actually, it may not be additional if 5.008 does not apply.
Yeah, I thought it was softer word than additional, but may I ask for Bo to also weigh in with his thoughts?
Yeah, I got myself sidetracked. I'm looking at 5.008 right now. So forgive me, I got sidetracked a little bit on the issue of whether or not the obligations under 5.008 can be waived, and I'm trying to track that down.
They can't.
So I apologize, I got sidetracked a little bit on what you guys were talking about. I wasn't tracking fully.
Here's how I see this. We're allowing the parties freedom of contract. We're allowing a buyer that wants these formerly boilerplate notices that were already built into the contract. We're pushing them out as a separate addendum to give more reasonable opportunity for seller to live it. And we're allowing either buyer and seller to agree to deliver that or not agree. Say, no, we don't have to do that. That's paragraph 3.
And as with any other property, if there's knowledge of defects, you have to tell the buyer. We're just providing a venue.
Material defect. Material defect.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Not
But
defect.
does any
But a lot
lawyer,
of these questions don't have to do with defect.
yeah, nobody's arguing that, but does anyone have a problem with the word optional? Yes. If you have something that should be disclosed by case law and that land notice does it.
Let me ask this question. The HOA addendum is optional. And so we don't have the word optional in there. And is there any problem with agents knowing that it's optional? Now, they may have their own firms that require it or don't require it. That may be part of their policies, which I think is what's going to happen here is the agents are going to develop, the firms are going to develop their own policies. Yes, when I sell a property or represent a buyer, I'm going to be negotiating for that to be delivered all the time or not. And they'll just get into that question in negotiations. So I don't see the word optional in the HOA addendum, but there seems to be knowledge out there that it is optional.
I think it's a good point.
I don't
This
think
isn't an addendum.
I think it's discouraging.
And I don't like where it's located currently for that reason, Lee. And again, I am not trying to discourage this. I think it should be filled out, but I, I don't like the only way that somebody knows it's optional is looking at number 3.
Well, aren't they going to have to do that? Make a choice of 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, I think it's better. I mean, I get what you're saying and I respect it. I just disagree. I think that the way it is on the screen right now really lends itself to get used, not only just to get used, period, but more effectively and more thoroughly with the consumer. I think if they see the word optional, they're just going to skip the paragraph and go on to the next one.
Good point.
Can I take 1 second here? I'm looking at what Ron was talking about, the HOA, Property Owners Association. So it does not say anywhere that it's on the form that it's required, but I mean, aren't we saying that, I mean, don't we say to our brokers and agents, if we have a form, you're to use it?
If I recall, doesn't the boilerplate in the main part of the contract say something like it's encouraged or recommended? Doesn't it say use that language?
You're talking about the HOA?
Yeah, I think in the main body of the contract, it says something like recommended or, you know, it doesn't say.
I was just looking at that. Yeah, it says expires about these matters. The TREC promulgated addendum for property subject to mandatory membership of the property association should be used.
Should be used.
Yeah.
Where are you exactly, Charlie? Sorry.
Page 22 of 92. It's it's page 3 of the 1 to 4 family.
Yeah, but where?
Section E2 at the very bottom.
Thank you.
It's in bold.
Right.
It should have everything in bold, of course.
If a buyer is concerned. But in the list of the TREC, the website, new organized website, when you go to pull that, it does not say anything about mandatory or not mandatory either.
Well, if you're going to use it, a license holder must use that form.
Yeah. But it does say at the top, real estate license holders are required to use this form.
Yeah, but Ron's correct. You don't have to use it. If a buyer is buying something in an HOA that they already live in, say they're buying another house, they might waive the use of that form, saying, I don't need that. And they can.
I'm with you, but my point, on the TREC website, notice regarding use of contract forms. Public records contract forms adopted by TREC are available to any person. Real estate license holders are required to use each form.
That's right.
But we all know, unless otherwise directed within the limits of the law by the consumer, if our client tells us to do something else that is legal, we have to do that.
Yeah, but we all know, and you might be talking to the 18 people, 19 people on this call, but we all, brokers and agents in the field, do not know the nuance of that.
But I guess Ron's point is that there's nothing in the 1 to 4 family or the HOA addendum that uses the word optional. So
that's true. That is true. Well, did we interrupt Bo? We got
to call the question.
Bo, what did you want to say?
I was just, and again, I'm mostly working this through in my head right now. The word optional kind of circles back to the origin of the very first conversation we had about this. Are these disclosures really mandatory? Are they required? Or is it something that is a best practice? And if they're not, if they are required, which I believe is the conclusion that we came to based on case law, then referencing them as optional there's something there that I can't quite reconcile. And then the second thing I was looking at, again, mostly in my head, trying to work it out, is can a buyer relieve a seller from a mandatory duty? And I think probably the answer is they can, probably. At a minimum, they can't relieve somebody from a duty and then turn around and complain about it, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I think a buyer probably can relieve a seller from a duty to disclose. However, we don't give a buyer the option to relieve the seller from their duties under 5.08. All we put in there is that they agree that the seller is exempted. That's different from a buyer relieving the seller of their duty. It's very different.
Like, if the I don't know. If the seller does not provide the sole disclosure in 5.08 and the buyer doesn't terminate and walk away, then they're accepting the house without it. Now, I don't know if that's the same thing as waiving that obligation, though.
I think it is.
I think those are completely different. The legislature does not allow anyone to waive that. It's not waivable. But going back on what Bo, and I'm talking about the sole disclosure notice 5.008, but on the land disclosure, I now like we're on 3 to say buyer waives instead of not requiring delivery. Because that's truly what is happening, is there is a waiver going on. And throw something else out there, are we committing to keeping up with all the case law?
That's exactly, I was going to express that too.
No, I'm not sure that I agree with the waiver part. I agree that the 5.08 you cannot waive. But in this section here, we're discussing about case law and requiring a particular form of notice. Regardless of the land disclosure notice, any material condition related to the property, including the ones that are listed in our new addendum, have to be disclosed, period. To me, this section says, are we going to require, is a buyer going to require the seller to provide this particular notice on these two issues? And so I think the waiver part goes a little too far in that this notice is not required. So that does not require language to me fits it better. And then they may choose to disclose it in another way, like they're required under the law for material conditions related to it. That I'm not sure I agree with the waiver language. And going back to the case law, there's the Board of Realtors forms that are out there are designed to address a lot of that case law. And these, we just circle back around to being important enough to actually include in the contract. And to the extent we go back to the discussion on what to keep up with and what not to, leads to the discussion of whether we need to have anything in there to begin with. So,
John, what do you think about SJ's point of, are we going to be responsible for keeping up with case law and adding information to the land disclosure notice? Because what if a case comes out, we, for some reason, don't address it or don't put it on the land disclosure notice? Aren't we setting a standard, at least for agents and generally for sellers, that our land disclosure notice covers them?
Don't we have a line on the disclosure notice, a last line that's other, where they can disclose other things that we haven't listed?
Not on the land disclosure.
Oh, okay.
You could.
With that.
Say that again, Lee?
I would say, that you have to remember that this is a very elemental, basic disclosure form. It's very simple. It's very plain language. Could an attorney do a better job? Of course. This is the thing that is the baseline. Just as there are all sorts of sellers disclosure forms that go above and beyond the law, you could have a more comprehensive disclosure form than this. This is just basic. And I don't.
So what I was saying is that if you, I get the concern, the question about, are we now going to have to keep up with case law and add to it and all that? And so I was saying, if we, under you know, if we had stuck other, and just said like other conditions or other, just other, they would have to disclose something else if they knew about it. Would that protect us against having to stay on top of the case law?
My concern with that is it leaves too much open for just litigation. Because if you just have other, you need to find what needs to be included in other. And we can go to the, material conditions affecting the property. But if you didn't include anything in there, it's at that ready point to say, well, we nitpick this little thing and you didn't include it on here. Therefore, we have a gotcha, like a lot of people like to say. And are fighting with that as opposed to the definite questions we have here to answer whether they're present or not. And to me, that tracks more the 5008 language. We don't have it broad any other conditions in 5008 either. And so that I'm concerned on how that would be used. Presumably that would not be filled in as it should be in a month. I think that would be a great decision.
And let me clarify something too, and I'm not, we do keep up with case law that has, over the time on the committee, we have changed the contract a couple of different times or amendments a couple of different times when there has either been a legislative change or a major case. I feel like we do that anyway. That's even on our agenda today. Look at cases and see what their effect is. So I'm not really worried about that part. But speaking of the word other, I would add a number 7. Hey, Fred, I think we can hear you. On number, we could add a number 7 that's on the screen right now after the threatened or endangered species, and let the seller tell anything else they know that might be out there. I would give them that space.
Current topics.
Say that again, Lee. I couldn't hear you whoever that was.
Well, that was the concern that John I said the same thing you did about number 7, other. And John had what, to a non-attorney, John had what sounded like a legitimate concern about the possible use of that.
I thought we were talking about the location of it. You suggesting it be in 7, just like right under the seller's disclosure, having an other there.
Well, my concern was more to having an other at all, because that's not under the current 5008 disclosures. And having an empty box, and I like Bo's opinion on this, in litigation, if that's not filled in, later if the buyer discover some condition on the property, then I'm going to go right back to and say that's not on there. It's black and white. You didn't disclose it. It was there. It opens it up to me a little bit more of creating future issues without really solving the problem. And we're going a little further.
I don't know, John.
Go ahead.
I could take your position, but I can take the other one. Okay, so I've got the seller, and you're like, why didn't you tell us? And I'm like, well, it wasn't even on this voluntary form. It's not on the seller's disclosure notice, and I'm not subject to that anyway, counsel. And then, there's nowhere for me to put it on here. The broker lawyer committee works on this. It's a brand new update. They want these 6 things disclosed, and my thing is not on this list, so I didn't have to disclose it. And that's how I am.
Go back to the contract provision that we're going to make paragraph H of the farm and ranch. Can you go back to that? Did we add at the end of this paragraph does not affect any other disclosure obligations the seller may have by law, and make it clear that there may be other things. We're not trying to affect that.
And I have a comment to that. I'm not opposed to what Brian said, but at the same time, I was thinking maybe we put a statement on the land notice that says, what a seller is. Because I think there's a blanket statement about a seller has to disclose anything they know about the property that would affect a reasonable person's decision, or, I mean, there's some blanket statement like that. Maybe we should just add it to the disclosure to remind the seller they're gonna tell what they know.
To take that to the next level, just to play it out, if we add it in this contract, would we then be looking to add the same thing in the 1 to 4, in all the other contracts except the 4 we're dealing with now? It takes it to another level of disclosure requirements that are already existing in the contracts or by IWOP.
Yeah, let me draw a small distinction here. We have, there's some general obligations in statute that you can point to that says that you have a obligation to disclose a known material defect with the property. But in vacant land, there's no considered a defect to property other than what would be normally listed here. There might be a couple others, I'm not entirely sure. But simply because a property floods a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's defective. Now, it may have an impact where there could be some liability issues that will rise up. So here we're just trying to identify things that, at least that have been addressed in common law one way or the other, that we're aware of, and think it's good policy to limit disputes by simply saying, are you aware of these things or not? And yeah, we will have to add to them as we see case law come along. But that comes along fairly rarely. It doesn't come along that often.
Okay, well then, grab my thought, go back to what Brian said.
I'd like to back up. I think that makes it clear that these are only things that we're calling out. It's not inclusive of all your obligations under the law in a very simplistic way. I think definitely.
On, can you go up?
What's that?
There you go.
I want to clarify something too. I don't think and correct, I want to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I don't think what Lee said a moment ago is accurate. I think what Ron said is more accurate. Yes, there is an obligation for an agent or a broker or a seller to disclose anything, a material matter that would affect whether a person would purchase or not. That's the law, but it's not in our form. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think you're right.
Okay.
Well, you said we already have in our form somewhere a general statement. I don't think we do. We don't.
My apologies. I did not mean to say in the form. I did not mean to say in the form, but I feel like out there somewhere there's a general type statement that I've seen repeatedly that I assume came from the law that about disclosing something that would be relevant to a reasonable person.
Yeah,
that's one of the elements
of the contract. But we were making some progress, and Brian has a drafting suggestion. Brian, what was it again?
Okay, so Ron, at the bottom of B, underneath number 3, just write, this paragraph does not affect any other disclosure obligations a seller may have by law. The paragraph does not affect any other disclosure obligations a seller may have by law.
Is it other or additional?
Same thing, plain language.
Other's good.
That's great.
Disclosure obligations.
Okay.
Like that.
Guys, what do you think?
Works for me.
I'm okay with it. Anybody else?
I still want to hear what Bo has to say.
All right,
Here's multiple times.
I'll be
Here's
here
my
more.
question.
Okay.
Here's my question with
what we're trying to achieve with 3? Are we trying to give the parties an ability to exempt the seller from disclosing anything? Are we trying to give the parties an opportunity to relieve the seller from filling out the land disclosure notice, but still maybe needing to disclose something? And that's why I'm not saying I have an answer, guys. I think I think we're making good progress here. I'm not trying to poo-poo that. I'm just trying to understand what the goal of number 3 is.
I think it's your second alternative. Here's what I envision could happen is that a seller may have, for example, an environmental assessment done, and he may have said, look, I don't know anything what's wrong with the property, but here's an environmental assessment. And that's everything I know. And then he writes in some sort of as-is clause. I could see that happening potentially.
Oh, I think, I read paragraph 3 very literally. It doesn't say buyer is exempt from the requirements of the law. I mean, the seller is exempt from, it doesn't say that. It just says, I require that you deliver this addendum.
That's right.
I don't require that you deliver this notice. Now,
could the seller read that and a listing agent read that they don't have to disclose?
No, not with the new language we have at the bottom.
In fact, let's change what I suggested and take out the word other. This paragraph does not affect any disclosure obligations to sellers by law.
Okay. We're reminding them to say, look, even if you agree not to require delivery of this notice, which I think will be a pretty rare thing, but the parties should have freedom of contract. You still are reminding sellers, hey, this doesn't change the law. If you have a duty to disclose, then you're going to have to disclose it.
So, Ron, take out the word other.
Please.
Thank you. You are a good man.
So if I'm understanding right, then if the parties select 3, there is still an obligation, there still is whatever obligation exists on the seller. Let's say the seller has the duty to disclose something that's on the land notice, and the parties check 3. Does the seller have to disclose whatever they're supposed to disclose in some format other than the land notice?
I don't know.
That was my question. How are they going to disclose if not using this notice? Then is a verbal disclosure going to create havoc? Or, I think the purpose of this notice was to get something in writing and not just have a, like sometimes out in the rural areas of farm and ranch, they just have a handshake.
I really think Bo's scenario, which is an interesting one and which makes me scratch my head and breaks my brain, is probably a less than 5% sort of thing. That I think it is possible that you might have a buyer that waives the requirement of this delivery, and then you have a non-disclosure of a seller, and then you have a lawsuit, and you have a court and 2 lawyers trying to figure out, did buyer rely on this or did they not rely on this? That to me seems like a pretty rare thing, and that I don't want to destroy the good in seeking the perfect.
I would like to say on that number 3, where you move the sentence into number 3, I think it should be separate and below, because it should be it's a notice no matter what they check that it doesn't disclosure obligations.
Like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a question of whether I'm comfortable with it, but the trial lawyers are not, because they perceive a conflict.
Should we bold that as well after other notices?
I don't think I don't agree that you're perceiving a conflict for me. I'm trying to ask a fundamental question of what are we trying to do? Are we trying to allow a buyer and a seller to waive the obligation, or are we trying to allow them to waive the use of the form?
The use of the form.
I think it's use of the form, Bo. That's how I read it.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Are we to the point that maybe we're close to, I mean, I get the question, so what if we put it out for public comment and see if they have those questions or if it's just us?
Guys, do you want to take a vote on this at this time?
Let me make a comment.
Brett, go ahead.
I see that number 3, you know, is giving option, and it seems as if it's clear. A recommendation. Why couldn't we put 3 right under number 1? So buyer has received land notice, and then it's very clear buyer does not require delivery of land notice, and then the option of, okay, there is a land notice, and here's how you have to do it.
I think just consistency with the other forms.
The only reason I wouldn't change it, Fred, is so that it reads exactly like, it flows like the seller's disclosure notice. And that 1 and 2 read like, so 3 is a new option that doesn't exist with the other.
Okay.
I like it for freedom of contract. I think that is an important principle. Especially if SJ, for example, has his clients that say, hell no, I'm not doing this, then they should have a box they should be able to check. It doesn't relieve them of their legal obligations of disclosure, but they could choose if they want. If they can have a buyer that agrees to it, they should have that right.
If we circle back to Bo's point earlier, which I agree, creates friction in the contract. This requires a discussion. It requires parties to seek help.
Yeah. In fact, it goes back to what, I don't know who said it when they were summarizing, I think it was you, John, when you were summarizing the point of this change is rather than have this be boilerplate, the way it currently is set up, it's much more likely for a seller and a buyer to ignore all of it. And the seller is making contractual representations maybe without realizing it. And so by changing the mechanism by which this disclosure is made, it really makes the seller own the representation. The mechanism is much better this way.
That's right.
Agreed.
Now I'm going to ask the question again. Do we want to vote on this?
Can I say one other thing?
Okay, Brian.
I like
The
the word
land
effect.
disclosure notice form itself, did you go to that? If you look at the disclosure, the statutory disclosure under 5.008, it says, are you aware of any of these things, yes or no? And here it says, this form just says seller is aware, but it does not affirmatively state that seller is not aware. I know I'm parsing words there, but I could see a litigator saying, well, I didn't check that box, but that's not saying that I wasn't aware of it. And the statutory 5.008 form says yes or no. So we could either go to the format that is in the statutory disclosure notice form, or we could have that sentence just say seller is not aware of any of the following conditions of the property except as noted below.
Guys, we covered this in the subcommittee. Ron, I think Ron was the one that came up with a pretty elegant solution on that. Ron, you want to cover why you did it this way? You remember?
No, because this was the one that was the pre-draft, right? That was circulated in the prior meeting, and
yeah.
So I think the committee.
My recollection is that we did when we first did it, we had the why or no, and then Ron figured out that the way it is, you don't need the why or in. You don't need the why or in, and it's mostly because of the way that he drafted explain any item checked above. But I'm not saying we're opposed to the wire in, because that's how we started. We were just trying to save space.
What if you left the form alone and you added a sentence so that somewhere in there you basically state affirmatively that any unchecked box is a representation by seller that those things don't exist?
Instead of aware of them.
Wow.
You don't want to say that.
Well, another solution would be to say seller is not aware of any of the following conditions of the property except as noted below.
That's too many words.
Well, and then
I cut out the word. That's the way the current contract reads. If you look at paragraph 7H, that's how it reads now. Except as otherwise disclosed, seller has no knowledge of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I think when it's like that, they don't read it.
Yeah. I think that's why we dropped the notice.
Do we want to track the seller's disclosure notice that we have promulgated, yes, no, or unknown, for consistency purposes?
There are sections in there that just have just a box on the seller's, well, maybe that's the.
It has the dishwasher.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be too easy on a seller. Remember, one of the purposes of making this notice mean something is to have the seller actively look at, make choices, and make it their act. If you make it too boilerplate and they just sign it, then it's really the same thing as the current language in the contract.
I think if you add,
Why don't we just follow that? Seller has no knowledge of any of the following. That's stronger than just aware. Seller has no knowledge of the following. That's stronger to me.
And I don't throw out there what's in the.
seller is aware.
I'd say let's follow the statutory form. Be consistent.
Are you seller aware of the following conditions? Write yes, why, if you're aware, write no in if you're not aware.
Yeah. That's 5.08.
We give them the choice of.
John, if you remember, and Terry, that's how we started out with it.
Right, with the yes and no. Yep.
We give them the choice of unknown.
Not in that section.
No, either you're aware or you're not aware. You don't have an unknown.
You're aware.
Why?
I can call Jay and find out if I'm aware or not.
And it forces him to answer every question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are we limiting it to only these questions?
For simplicity, because that's
Those
what the
were the ones in 7H.
yeah, we're trying not to change too much.
How about this floodplain, which is the hottest?
Well, we've been without that question. Just look at what our contract has had in the farm and ranch for 25 years. If it's been fine with paragraph 7H, we haven't had a category that screams at us, I don't think we need to do that.
Well, again, word from the field, from the farm and ranch brokers, that is one of the very first things they talk about. And, again, I'm sure if you're at Republic Ranches, you're doing a different job than Joe Schmo, one-off ranch broker in some tiny town. But that's a major thing. I mean, a farm and ranch or empty land today may be a farm and ranch, an empty land tomorrow, but it also might be a subdivision. It also might be a commercial, losing my words here, but, group of commercial warehouses, commercial subdivision. It might be something else. And the floodplain is huge for that, for any future development. And even if you're going to keep it as a hunting ranch or a cow place, now you may be holding it and are going to use it later.
I would just say that I have not received any email from any license holder since being on this committee that has asked for that change.
Oh, as I mentioned before, the guys I've talked to, they don't think they need to change. But they're also doing they're like, most of those guys are acting like large commercial brokers who are sophisticated. And they're not using our forms anyway.
There you go. Hey, Ron.
Right.
Hey, Ron, you missed, I think you missed aware up in the intro question.
Oh, okay.
Seller aware.
Oh, okay.
Sellers in parentheses.
Seller, there's some parentheses in the seller's disclosure we might want to follow too. Yeah, just like that.
Yep, you got it.
Out of the game.
All right. Any?
And then where it says explain any item checked above, you have to say if the answer to any of the above is yes, explain.
There you go.
Attach additional sheets if necessary. That's in the form.
One other thing that might be, that it's certainly been the subject of cases, and I wasn't on the committee, so I didn't go do this research, but already planned governmental development like roads or non-governmental, but potential ED pipeline, anything like that. I don't think that's going to get picked up on what's here. I mean, it's not necessarily a lawsuit, and it's not necessarily a condemnation, but certainly for that kind of thing, some of it might be affecting, but that's pretty limited to lawsuits, condemnation, or special assessment.
You mean like eminent domain?
Well, I'm saying like roads coming in, or
That's not condemnation.
Well, again, those are not necessarily going to be.
Voluntary.
Those are not going to be.
Process goes. I mean, it's sorry, whoever that is. Oh, somebody.
I'm just going to say those are not necessarily considered to be defects that need to be disclosed. There may be a need in terms of governmental action or governmental intention to potentially disclose those, but those cases are simply because a road is coming through or there's a pipeline that's nearby. That doesn't necessarily mean that those have to be disclosed.
I don't think material defect is standard. It's material condition.
Right. You're correct. Condition.
And where that comes from is the, these are the elements of a cause of action for either fraud or a negligent misrepresentation. And that's what we're going to be dealing with later. People don't do this. So it's not, they can be good conditions too. They could be, but.
My vote is to follow the language that is currently in 7H as to what we disclose. And by using this form, it will give the public the opportunity to identify things that they may want to add to the list later.
It is a very simple form, and if it's not good enough because it's a sophisticated commercial transaction, I have no worry that parties and their attorneys will use a different form of disclosure or a different form of contract.
And I bet somebody at lunch that the comments we get back is we don't want to make these disclosures because nobody realizes they're making them already. In every presentation I give, and I've had just a handful of people say, "Oh, I realized this for you." People just don't know. So I think we're going to get pushback regardless on the disclosures, and keeping it in there is a great first step, and I think the right step.
I think it bears repeating that we're not changing the type of disclosure a seller is making. We're changing the mechanism by which they make it so that they have more involvement in the process.
That's right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the same as what's currently in the contract.
We're adding friction.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would add.
Thanks, Charlie.
My vote would be add number 7. My vote
Anybody
is to
else?
add a number 7.
Which is what?
My vote is to add a number 7 with an other where they can fill in something
I'm not in favor of that.
that is not on this tiny list I know you're not in favor of it, Charles, but, you know, we're getting close to making a motion. There's going to be competing motions.
Other matters that materially and adversely affect the property.
Or adversely, and that would be great.
Hey, does somebody have access to the Texas Realtors form? I think we could copy some language there. Ron, you may have to get it. I think they have a question that's very similar to what SJ is proposing.
On which form? I can pull it up.
Texas Realtors, seller's disclosure, I think it's question number 4, I think.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm just close the deal. Actually, before we started today on that. Hang on. Your section number 4?
I think so.
You say number 4?
It's a catch-all question. It's anything materially affecting the property, something like that. Can't remember the exact language.
What section are you thinking that's in?
I think it's actually question number 4.
4 is financing, 7 is property condition.
I think he's talking about the seller disclosure form, aren't you?
Yeah. Texas Realtor seller disclosure form.
The single,
Sorry, I thought you were about the commercial.
Or any item, everyone says so, in or on the property that is in need of repair, which has not previously been disclosed in its codes.
Yeah, okay, that's not what I was thinking, sorry.
No.
But I think what SJ is trying to say is put something in here that establishes the standard in a way that would lead a seller to want to disclose something else. Is that right?
Yes. I don't want them to just say, oh, well, you know, it's not flooding and it's not a pending lawsuit, it's not an environmental hazard or a dump site, so I don't have to do anything.
That is one of my
You know, and
overriding
there is case law about it. Sorry?
with the form that we are, maybe not intentionally, we're sending a message, hey, this is, if you're a seller, this is what you got to disclose. I get that.
And I believe there is a case about it, the known tendency of a stockyard opening, you know, a feeding lot opening. There's a case on that, and that should have been disclosed because everybody knows it's stinky nuisance.
Isn't that the essence of farm and ranch? So
By adding other, are we possibly expanding a seller's liability because they're making an affirmative representation?
Yes.
That's what John didn't like.
I agree with that.
I think I found what Bo was thinking of. If I can get back to that screen, I'll read it to you. Right above the signature line on the Texas Realtor seller's disclosure, it says, seller acknowledges the statements in this notice are true to the best of the seller's belief and that no person, including the broker, has instructed or influenced seller to provide inaccurate information or to omit any material information. Would that be what you were thinking about, Bo?
No, it's not, and I may have just, my mind may have taken us down a wrong trail. I thought there was a question in there that basically set the generic standard and said, is there anything like that you need to disclose? And what I mean is something along the lines of, is there any material defect that is not referenced elsewhere in the form that you're aware of? Something along those lines, which wouldn't exactly work for what we're talking about for obvious reasons. But I get SJ's concern. I also get Brian's concern that we don't want to create liability where none exists. Trust me, I get that, especially in light of what just happened with the Texas Realtor form, with the lawsuit that they had circulating. The Harris lawsuit. Yeah, Harris. I get it. It's why this whole thing makes me, honestly, this whole concept makes me nervous because we really need to do this the right way.
How about
Seven, and any other items that seller by law is required to disclose.
That's carried.
Smokers, you want to just go ahead and put the lawyer's phone numbers right under that so they can call it.
Thinking of you.
Lawyers can't agree, but it's required to be disclosed, so how can we put that on the party?
I don't understand why, if this language has never been in the farm and ranch contracts for decades,
Why do we need to?
why do we need to know? Why can't we take baby steps on this very dramatic change and simply keep the same refs that were already in the existing contract, which seem to serve us pretty well so far based on the traffic that comes into the broker lawyer committee?
Well, I think John's point on that is accurate, that we don't really know if it's been working because we think most people ignore it.
Yeah.
Hey, how about this? Go back to paragraph H, and instead of saying this paragraph does not affect, say this paragraph and the land notice do not affect any other disclosure notice obligation the seller may have. This paragraph and the land notice do not affect.
Awesome. I like that. My only fear still with adding that catch-all at the end is we don't require that in any other contract. And I think the bid force are already going to come out with this land notice to begin with. And if we add that in there, it's going to be that much worse. And then we're going to be back to the position, do we have this in there to begin with at all? And if so, are we jumping backwards to not having 7 to begin with? Or, 7 in the land notice itself. And so I'm in favor of kind of what Charles was saying. Let's get this out there. This is a good first step, and then see how it's received, and not create this additional liability. I really think we have to bring cost back by having it. At least we have a reasonable justification of why we have to notice and calling it out and getting it out there so it's utilized. And then people can tell us we don't want to do any of it, and we can relook at it. They say that, or they like it.
You can always, if there's strong pushback, you just don't make the change, and you leave paragraph 7H the way it is in the contract, and they know about it.
And we accomplished our goal by getting everybody fired up with it and starting to notice it to begin with.
Maybe. So I'm trying to see if there is I think there's general consensus on this paragraph B, which will be paragraph H.
Hey, Charles, I just kind of modified the flow of the sentence because I was thinking the and between the two didn't work. And I think you want to talk about them independently. So I changed neither this paragraph nor the land notice. And then I wasn't sure about the word effect here. So I thought maybe relieve or diminish.
I like relieve better.
Thank you. There. Way.
Okay, so let's go back to the disclosure form.
So the question is, do you want that number 7 in there?
Let's just go around the board and tell me who wants it in there and tell me who doesn't. Let's just, Ron, take roll. This isn't a vote. This is just what do people think?
Okay, wait, who wants what?
Number 7.
Number 7.
Okay.
And Charles, this assumes we are going to make the change in the contract.
Correct.
Saying that the notice does not affect relieve or whatever.
Yes.
All right. Hey, John George?
I think we need it.
Yeah.
Okay, no.
Okay.
Bo?
Conflicted, yes.
All right. Charlie?
Come on.
Respectful, yes. No.
No. Okay. Fred?
Yes.
All right. SJ? We come back to Charles Kramer?
I say no to that.
Brian Watts?
No.
Lee York?
Yes. New York says yes. Actually, I don't like the word adversely
Yeah, firstly,
Okay, well, as written right now, are you yes or no generally with another?
no.
Okay, so, all right.
I'm kind of no. I mean, I like that there's something written, but I'm no to adversely.
All right, but you want something in there. I'm going to count you as a yes, and then we'll take up that as a second issue.
Yeah.
Okay, and then,
I'm not trying to derail us, but the governor is speaking right now about reopening the state.
okay. Let's see, Terry, did you cast something?
Terry's a yes.
All right, Greg Glenn,
No.
Amy,
I'm a yes.
okay, I'm a no, so I think it's even. We're pretty split. Well, why don't we, Charles, let me suggest this. We're going to come back and talk about the form anyway. Why don't we leave it in for this draft and come back and hammer that out, number 7 at the next meeting?
Oh, is your suggestion to go ahead and push this over to Trek as written here with the?
No. We're going to come back and discuss this at our next meeting.
All right, let's just table this whole item here.
So I'm gonna leave this in the current draft, and we'll come back in and talk about number 7. How about that?
Okay.
All right.
I'm okay. All right. So I'm curious to know whether we think we're going to get through this without a break. Talk about the contract and the comment. What do you guys want to do? Want to fly through there? A lot of the comments have been addressed already, but you want to do that?
I think most.
Well,
can I make a point? You know, we have been making so many good changes to these contracts. At some point in time, we need to stop and ask the commission to move with the things that we have suggested. And I would try to table as few items as possible.
Greg, turn your microphone off.
Yeah, whoever's broadcasting the speech, go ahead and silence that. And
I actually agree with Guy about that.
So do we want to maybe make a motion to send these red line contracts on the Trek except for the source disclosure working group work? Is that what I'm sensing?
I don't know why before they go to public comment. Is that? Why don't we just take a vote on it?
I would suggest us not doing that in light of our current conditions, because I think it might be more prudent, given that the state may be opening up, that allows the committee to come back together as a group, perhaps, or to, in a month or two, and then perhaps maybe we can come back with the full commission in a month or two after that, and then they can publish the forms. I think publishing the forms in its current condition is going to be a little hectic to be able to push that out right now. I'd like to come back and look at the full draft of what we can send to the commission one last time.
I think we can, though. I mean, we have to get something in front of them to get things out for comment. I'll say let's do that now, and we can readdress it at the next meeting.
Well, the problem is if they publish and you add a land disclosure, that's going to be a requirement. Then it's going to be a material change, and they'll have to republish.
Yeah.
So we need to send to them what we think we want them to adopt sometime, and their publication process is going to take about 3 or 4 months.
Well, then let's back out the land disclosure and do everything else to be my vote.
Okay, so that's going to push off.
Are you saying do nothing yet?
Well,
no,
my suggestion would be if we're going to seriously consider the land disclosure, for the next round of contract forms, then we need to wait and come back and decide on this issue and look at the forms in their totality and send that to the commission. But if we're going to take it out and not deal with it this time, then I think we have documents that we can send to them for publication.
I'm in favor of the latter. Because remember, it's not just the option. There's really good language on the lease stuff.
Smart homes.
Smart home technology. You know, I could wait a couple of years, to be honest, on my time will be on here, but I could table the land disclosure for quite a while.
I agree with that. I think we should move on what we have. I think everything else we're agreed upon.
Anybody else have an opinion? Brokers, lawyers?
I think if we don't feel like we have to do something on the land contract, then yeah, we can send everything else. But if we want to get the land thing done this time, I think we need to wait and send it all together. Because I don't want it to be given a new contract every few months.
To me, the land issue has not been an issue in the contract, and it hasn't presented itself because people are just ignoring it, which is its own issue. Where the other issues are, you know, the option money, the smart home stuff, that's creating issues right now.
I agree. Well, heck, I'm going to make a motion and see if anyone seconds it. We'll just vote. I move that we go ahead and submit these change contracts, save and accept for the changes to the land disclosure section of the Farm and Ranch and Unimproved Property section on the track for their submission and publication. Second. I've made a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have one, and that assumes the changes we made today, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. All right, Ron, why don't you take a roll call?
What do you want to just see if there's any no's?
Okay. If anybody is opposed to this motion, which has been made and seconded, please say so right now. Is that a no or is that just noise?
Just noise.
Okay, so we have all in favor have said aye. We'll take that as a deemed aye, and we'll push forward all of these red line changes, save and accept the ones we're pulling back. Okay. Do we want to talk about the comments, or is there any comment that isn't addressed by the red lines? Maybe we can. I don't want to shorten the meeting, but was there any comment that addressed an issue that we haven't dealt with?
I think there was only about 10 or 15 pages.
Say that again, Ron?
There were only, about 10 or 15 pages of comments, maybe, and the rest were the forms.
Correct. I didn't see much.
I do think there are comments, though, Ron, about what we've talked about, at least with our two. There was starting with Charles Kramer.
Yeah, okay.
No, Charles Kramer's comment's been dealt with.
Yeah, well, let's just walk through it though, and.
Okay, let's do that then.
I got to page 7 before I ran into something we had.
All right.
Well, we have Lavonda Potts on page 3.
Yeah,
Right.
Oh, wait, I see what you're saying. Deemed objections. I'm going to take that.
That's you.
Yeah, that's a small thing.
Is that,
Let's talk about it. It's
All right.
official. Thanks to the committee.
I just noticed that. I mean, has anybody read my comment and does anyone?
yeah. It's very confusing how that was wrote beforehand.
Which one is he on?
This is on page 3 of 92.
Mm-hmm.
God, it was a long time ago. The world was very different back then.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with you. People don't think that. Has it been a problem? Yes.
It's just an observation. Someone asked me the question and I looked at it and said, I don't know, based on the language of the contract, what the answer is.
Well, keep in mind that Schedule C requirement is not an exception. It is the title company's requirement in order to issue the title policy.
Okay.
So you don't need to object to that.
Well, we know that. The question is, if you get a 15-day extension because of that Schedule C requirement, and we say in the contract that Schedule C requirements are automatic exceptions of objection of the buyer.
Where does it say that?
Well, it says that the buyer is not required to object to those things. Okay?
All it says is,
So when does the 15 days start?
Well, you could say Schedule C matters are deemed objections as of the issuance of the commitment.
Does anyone not feel those are deemed objections? That's, do we need language that says that? I thought they were deemed objections.
I'm just curious, not challenged. Why do you think that? They're deemed, where is that from?
Paragraph 6D is in dog. Says when buyer can object. It says, except Schedule C of the commitment are objections, except that the requirements in Schedule C of the commitment are not deemed waived by buyer.
I know it's made by buyer.
Yes.
They're deemed.
That's what I call a deemed objection. They're automatic.
And implied.
Whatever you want to call them. There are matters which will, in my opinion, allow extension of the closing date, the 15 days right below.
What if we said closing will not be extended as a result of any Schedule C matters?
You want to do that?
Well, no.
I don't think
this is the same question. I mean, I get where y'all have looked at this and went, oh, it's unclear to us. Has ever been, I mean, has anybody seen where this problem has come up because this isn't clear?
That's why I'm saying, I looked at it. Okay.
Load off.
All right, so we're moving on.
Does anybody else want to talk about it?
No, I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay. Well, I'm ready to move on because I've made an observation. But I don't see a huge problem with it. Lavonda.
That's all Texas rule stuff she's talking about.
Looks like
Most of it.
yeah.
And we can't get to the home.
Most of it.
Brian Watts, I think we've dealt with this by.
No, this is just a reminder that we have to change the receipt page.
Oh, okay. Let's make a note of that in our minutes so that we can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the next page 5 quits are the stuff we talked about. Have we thoroughly addressed those? I think we have.
Yes.
Page 7, Alex Davis.
There's no agreement until it's in writing, so why do we care?
Yeah.
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 I don't see a solution. If someone doesn't return a contract, I don't know how words solve that problem.
To somebody else.
Agree to it.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing people can do is if they want to have an offer to terminate at a certain amount of time, they can include that in the special provisions and say this offer terminates on, whatever, April 30th.
Yeah.
It's not accepted.
Put that line there. Okay. Sarah Lyons.
And this
Can
is
we
in my office. And I can say I had a conversation with her, and the only, after discussing this with her and knowing what our subcommittees were working on, really the only thing left is the second item where she asked about washer dryers and fridge explicitly stated as items not included. I can argue that either way.
We don't have practice of excluding things in the form, do we?
I was gonna say the same thing. Do we have any expressly stated exclusions to this list?
And zero might be a fixture.
Yeah. It is confusing in the marketplace, more so now than it was 10 years ago. I think that's because we have so many buyers and sellers that come here from other states, more so than we used to. In other states, they treat it differently. They think the fridge goes, or they think the washer and dryer stay, you know. And I mean, we've been handling it in the marketplace, but it is more and more something we have to address. There are certainly a lot. I mean, I think agents have bought more washers, dryers, and refrigerators than anything else for consumers. So, yes, if y'all want to do anything or not, I'm fine either way.
I'm not a
Something that I've experienced is that.
Yeah.
You know,
Anybody do anything?
Okay.
All right. Alwyn Piesick says, love it, go for it, good change. And then he makes a comment on a right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Below that, we have my comment, which we've already dealt with. And is that the end of the comments?
Yeah, did we get any on that supplemental? Oh, just,
There was the TLTA
okay.
and anything else?
Okay, and I'm going a little crazy here. We did talk about all the lease addendums and everything.
Well,
I don't remember that.
We did on the last meeting.
I thought we talked about it last time.
It's, hey, Brian, it's there. Look at the screen in the current drafts that you have. That's what we came up with at the last meeting. And I thought that's where we concluded that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The green.
Cool. I've looked at it, and it's excellent work. There's a lot of excellent stuff, and there will be a big training exercise across the state if these get adopted, but I'm pretty proud of what we've done. Really is.
I think there was something else in the supplemental.
Yeah, there's one other comment. There was one by Kathy Faulkner.
On page 74 too.
Ron, can you pull that up?
On page 70,
It was on the supplement.
on the supplement.
Kathy Faulkner, if that's the one they're talking about, that hasn't been addressed yet.
Yeah.
It was after the TLTA
No, there
stuff
was-
right at the end.
Go to page 74, please.
All right. It's from Kathy Faulkner, and it was a question I didn't really understand. Let's see here.
Page 74 is Dion Dykert.
Yeah, they're in the
The supplemental.
Which one am I looking at here?
The last thing in the supplemental.
I'm sorry. We have several. Let me clarify. Okay. Starting on page 74, we have several comments. Dion Dyker.
Where's the supplemental?
Wants to change. It looks like Dion wants to
Is the
change
supplemental posted?
to
There's an email from Amber.
temporary
Oh,
residential
I
use.
don't have that.
Always make it 60 days or less. Is that right?
I'll have to pull it up here.
Or the lenders don't like it in 60 days. We talked about this before and not done.
But you can do a seller's temporary residential lease for a cash
Is it posted?
deal or a non-paying deal, right?
Yep.
And 90 days is the key time frame under the property code.
Yeah, for smoke detectors and all that stuff.
Right.
Long-term. I'm I'm not inclined to change this based on Fannie Mae, even though they're powerful and important. They're not the whole banana.
So I did check with the lender, and on any new loan owner, it seems like they are limiting it to 60 days, but I don't see the need to change it because, like you said, the cash deal, some other thing, you know, it's up to the agent to understand those rules.
Okay. I'm gonna move on to Gala Skates. California just released an addendum for their use. We need to use it. There's a TXR COVID form. I hope to God we don't need to create one. I hope this is a temporary condition.
They're looking for something else.
Well, HAR has one out there already.
I think
So does MetroTex, and most of the brokers have their own as well.
yeah, but my point is that if Trek adopts one, that's intended to be a permanent addition to their library, which would suggest that, one, it supplants all of the local associations and TXR's version. And I just don't want to do that at this time. Does anybody really want to create an addendum?
I don't think there be issues with these addendums that are out there. They're so loose and creating a lot of problems.
I'm willing to be optimistic and say it will be obsolete by the time it could get through us and Trek.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. We don't need to. And lastly, before we leave the main body of this, Kathy Faulkner says, I'm the MLS director. You notice there's a space for initials. One space for the landlord and tenant, and there's 2 spaces on the contracts.
I'm humbled.
You don't have to get initials on the line. They can be nearby.
Not two.
That's a formatting issue y'all can fix.
Yeah, I don't care.
Hey, guys, that's a formatting issue that I think the staff can take care of.
All right, let's pass it on to staff. I don't know who's listening, so I've got no editorial comment.
Vanessa has got her first assignment.
Let's look at the the supplement. Let's see if there are any comments on that.
There's a Kathy Faulkner at the end.
Another one? Okay.
Same person.
That was probably the question I didn't understand.
It's an education matter.
Yeah.
Okay, here it is. What is the purpose of a hydrostatic test addendum? It's to permit a hydrostatic test. We don't know what a hydrostatic, we're going to assign Fred to go out there and talk to them.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that anything that the forms that the broker lawyer committee does I don't know that we can clarify their confusion. I don't see a solution for us on this.
Well, the legal update class takes care of that too. I've actually had a lot of good feedback on that video Fred made.
Yeah.
People, now I really understand that test I didn't before with other pieces of class. But effectively, Fred did us a good service by creating that.
Good freaking Rick. Okay, that's the comments. Comment and action regarding recent court cases. Someone threw the Moody case in there.
That was me.
Yeah. So is that a suggestion to put time is of the essence in the contract?
Well, no. It's and this is something that we're gonna. I just wanted to start the conversation in general with this group because I remember when I first joined the committee, Chuck Jacobus made an impassioned statement that we all know that this is not a time is of the essence contract, and if a buyer missed closing by 1 day, the seller did not have the right to terminate the contract because time is not of the essence. That's what he said, and I think that was generally understood by attorneys
additional forms that we've
in the market.
created.
That probably was. It's not clear, but that's probably the general rule that you have to say time is of the essence to make it crystal clear. But this Capcor case came out in 2014, and then there's also a case, Manor versus Manor, that was December of 2019, that cited Capcor with authority. And what the Capcor case says is based solely on the wording of the TREC contract. Time is of the essence of a party's obligation to close by the date specified in paragraph 9. And in that case, the defendant had asked that the judge give an instruction to the jury as to whether that was a material breach or not. And the appellate court said, nope, that is something for the court to decide, because as a matter of law, we find it is crystal clear that the TREC contract form is a time is of the essence clause provision with respect to paragraph 9. Now, we can have a debate as to whether that's good or bad, but I just want everyone to understand that now there's court authority that solidifies that. So it leaves it to us then, do we just do nothing and stay with that court decision, or do we want to affirmatively make it clear one way or another that time is of the essence, time is not of the essence, or blended where we say it's not of the essence unless the default continues for 5 days or something like that. But I'm just putting on the table that there are these court decisions out here that have clearly stated it is of the essence, which is counter to what generally this committee has expressed as its opinion.
If we somehow say time is not of the essence and don't give any guidance, is there some idea of how long that allows it to stretch on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's not. So, I mean, for example, you could say that if a party doesn't close by the designated date, they're obligated for damages due to the delay, and the non-defaulting party can terminate if the default is not cured within 5 days. I'm just throwing that out. I mean, you could have something like that if you wanted. I'm just saying that
in practice, we haven't had a lot of problems done right now. I don't know.
Yeah, and let me give you the facts of this Capcor case. The seller, the buyer came to the title company on the day of closing with the cashier's check, and the title company said, oh, this is too much. It was really a commercial deal. This is too much money. We need to have wired funds. And he wasn't able to wire funds until the next morning. And the seller said, oh, sorry, too late. I'm terminating.
There's a lot of alignment at the parties here too, a lot of underlying.
Don't go to that one, yeah. The name Moody is on the title company and the seller.
One thing that this case is being taught again in the legal update material, so this is part of the curriculum now that people are learning about. And I like the idea of making it clear one way or the other, because a lot of questions are, so does that mean we're going to close on time because something that's not our fault or we automatically breach? There's like, yeah.
I'm going to say that, Brian, you correctly summarized both the case and the prior philosophy of this committee, and the opinion of many lawyers for many decades. Now, are they wrong? Possibly, but I'm not ready at this point to say that based on the Moody case and one other appellate case, this is now the law of the land. I don't know. It will change the way I teach it when I talk to agents. And I'm going to bring up the Moody case and say warning. But I don't, unlike the case that reaffirmed the language, that reaffirmed the concept of 3 times the earnest money can't be punitive damages. Punitive damages have to be reasonably related. That's well established and agreed law. I don't know that I agree with this yet. I mean, I want to see more cases come out before I decided it's the law of the state of Texas. It's surprising.
Okay, well, there's another one too, the Manor versus Manor case, December
Well,
2019.
We want to now take.
What district court was served, that public court was set out of?
Yeah, that's what I was curious. Manor versus Manor, I think it was Fort Worth. It's not like it was.
I just don't sense a groundswell of legal consensus. That was the same as the last change we made. I might add this, that the contracts have stood us pretty well. Time is of the essence clause. In fact, might argue that the elasticity of the closing date, which will eventually snap, you can't say, well, I get 30 days, but the fact that a buyer and a seller might perceive and believe that under the law, a 24-hour delay is a non-material breach. I think it's a good thing for the consumers of the state of Texas. It keeps deals together and keeps the original part. These contracts have got a lot of ways that they can break and terminate. And you want to sharpen them and make them more brittle than they already are, or do you want to keep this elastic concept around? I don't know. I'm not moved to make a change at this time.
Well, I think that's part of Ryan's point too, is making it clear what our position is on the issue. Since there's this new, since there are court cases out there saying it is time of the essence, do we really want it to be? And, I'm not necessarily in favor of it that way.
Charles, if you do nothing, you've just been overruled by these two court decisions.
No, I disagree with that. First of all, Manor versus Manor is a memorandum opinion issued by a visiting judge. Okay, in this Capcor at Kirby, Maine, and it pains me to say this, but Justice Massengale, who is a great jurist and a Republican, lost his seat. And our Court of Appeals, both the first and the 14th in Houston, again, in my personal opinion, very unfortunately, are now a minority conservative jurist. And what is happening in Harris County, the two courts of appeals here, is completely different than what has happened for the last 30 years. The courts are taking every opportunity to overrule prior ruling. With respect to Justice Massengale, I don't know if this will stand up if it's challenged again in the two courts in Houston, certainly, and they're very independent. The first court, I don't know if that's going to stand up or not at all. And again, Manor is Fort Worth, but it's a memorandum opinion which is published, but I don't know. I want to stick with what we've got.
And you can read this better than I can, SJ, but there were two Manor versus Manor opinions. There was one in October, and then they had a rehearing in December.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at, this one says delivered December 31, 2019.
Yeah. That's the one.
Is that the right one?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, that's a memorandum opinion by visiting Judge Ruben Gonzalez.
Oh, I thought it said
Yeah,
opinion.
this is following the motion for rehearing in October. So this is the final.
It was before Sutter, Kerr, and Gonzalez. And so the visiting judge wrote the opinion, but it was before all three of them.
But Sutter, Kerr is not citing Capcor, right?
I think it was.
What's a seminal case on the other side of the argument that it's not time of the essence? You talked about the general notion, but I've never had the need to decide that.
It's the general presumption that time is not of the essence unless it is material to the deal, and the presumption is that it's not unless you prove that it is. But don't we want to give that freedom of flexibility for both the seller and the buyer to make that decision as opposed to be dictated?
No.
Their eyeballs will roll around.
I mean,
We want it to be clear.
so do we need to meet as a body and amend the contract every time there's 1 to 2 appellate cases that come out that and interpret our contracts?
No.
My only concern is I agree with
No.
your logic. I mean, if you look at how the paragraph 9 reads, you know, if you close on or before that date, and we're within 7 days after the objections are cured, and if not, the non-default party can exercise remedies in paragraph 15. To me, that's plain language, and I agree.
Well, I haven't read either of these cases, so I'm a little ignorant. Do they analyze the fact that there are paragraphs that specifically state time is of the essence, and the closing paragraph doesn't specifically state that?
But, you know, the procedural posture of this case was the defendant or the plaintiff asked for a jury instruction as to whether it was material or not. And the court said, I don't need to put this in front of the jury. This isn't a fact question. I'm reading the plain language of the TREC contract. And I read it.
That's my question. Are they reading the plain language of the entire TREC contract where some paragraphs say time is of the essence, some do not?
No.
I'm wondering.
I addressed that part, but if you read the plain language of it, it says if you fail to close by the
You don't read plain language of one or two sentences, you read the contract. So I'm just asking, was the proper argument made here? That's all I'm asking.
I think it was an awful decision, in my personal opinion. But it's the opinion.
The question is, do we want to change anything based on the movie on these 1 or 2 cases?
No.
No, here. Anybody else?
No.
No. One follow-up question is why does the language of the contract not lead to a party's ability to exercise the remedies in paragraph 15 if it's not closed on time?
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question in response. With respect to the concept of material breach versus non-material breach. So let's say that I'm supposed to close on Thursday as a buyer. And on Monday at 9 a.m., I wired in all my money and I had signed the previous day. So the last piece of my money hits at 9 a.m. as opposed to 5 the prior Thursday. I might, as a buyer, want to argue that is not a material breach, that the law of the land is that we give effect to contracts. The law abhors a default. We try and keep, as a general principle of law, we try and give effect to the party's intent. And so, that type of breach is different than a buyer who shows up 2 weeks later and says, I'm ready to close. And so I do feel that a few hours is not a material breach. And I don't want to make this section of the contract now a guillotine.
I 100% agree with you in the concept and in the flexibility we need in the contract. My concern is with as written that actually the other facts of the case make the case just wrong on several levels. But I agree with the notion of this. The plain language of this contract says if you fail to close on that date, then you can exercise the remedies in paragraph 15. Doesn't say you have to, but says you can. And so that's my concern. If we want to keep that flexibility, that I would like to, not today, but think about.
I must point out that prior to these cases coming out, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, you did have lawyers that got retained by sellers and buyers, where one lawyer would claim it's breach of contract, and one would say time is not of the essence, and they would all bring in their respective law. And so I'm not sure that anyone loses any legal right to argue what you want to argue, which I think is kind of wonderful, if they want to, by not having this addressed in the contract. You could argue that this is not a material breach, or you could run to the Moody case and you could argue, yes, it is. And they get that right. If that's the sword they want to raise and do it, they have that right.
Well,
but I don't, anyway.
I suggest
we want to make it clear.
My suggestion at this point would be to not make the change based on the arguments that we've heard here or these cases, because Charles says is correct. You have the arguments out there that could go either way depending on the facts of the case. And then secondly, the words out there to the brokers are, you can't take the chance now of not strictly complying with the time limits. You now really need to encourage your parties to strictly comply. And if they don't strictly comply with time limits, they always ran the risk of being thrown into default anyway. It was just a matter of, did they have an excuse? So I don't think there's any difference to the public, generally speaking, in terms of what, if we put a change in or didn't put a change in today. And we can let this evolve a little bit further and continue to discuss it in our next meetings. That would be my suggestion based on this conversation.
Let's put it in the minutes as a discussion point. We can give it another 15 or 20 minutes, and the brokers can listen to the lawyers go back and forth. But I would like to, I don't mind talking about it. It's fascinating, and it's what makes my job as a lawyer so interesting. I am more of a, just like I am with the COVID addendum and having the state promulgate one, I'm a turtle. I want changes to be gentle and not earth shaking at this time.
And I totally agree with that. And I don't think we need to necessarily discuss more today. I'd like to go back and look at the other law before CAFR to see, where these arguments were made. So I just don't know off the top of my head. And one concern that I have outside the context of the closing date is the force majeure provision. I've litigated a case through the Houston Court of Appeals that was about the catch-all phrase. And the big argument there is the parties' contract. We're going to read the parties' contract and what they wrote. We're not going to dig into historical notions of force majeure. And that's actually arguing the other side that it needs to be flexible. If we got the court saying catch-all provisions, there still is foreseeability for some cases. But the Supreme Court cases cited there were for the proposition, no, we're going to read it exactly how it's written. And so I like the idea of looking at it. I don't like the idea of changing it necessarily, but I think it's definitely worth our time.
It should raise our eyebrows. Okay, I would like to move on, if we can, to future agenda items and meeting dates. I have a spontaneous comment, maybe for the next meeting or the meeting after. And I'm looking into the sunset. My time on this committee is drawing to a close. I think I'm done next year. And we're going to lose Ron too. And Ron is probably the biggest repository of historical knowledge of this committee. And when he's gone, it will be a big blow. And so I would like to suggest, and we can talk about it next time, whether we want to use our fine skills in drafting to put down some basic principles of how that, for example, the 5% rule and what that means for future committee members to guide them in their discussions, what we believe in as a committee and what guides us when we have these debates, avoiding litigation and our philosophy. I'd like to get that down in writing so that future members of the committee can try and operate by the same principles that guide us, which were handed to us by older members of the committee. Anyway.
Agreed. Come on, that's great. Love that.
In favor?
Okay.
Oh,
And
I'm in favor of that. I thought that, go ahead. Amy.
Oh, I was just gonna say, alternatively, maybe neither you nor Ron can ever come on.
Let me, yeah, I was reappointed last time, so Charles was trying to cut me short, but, I got a few more years left. 5 more years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. You have 5 years to come up with our principles.
Well, are the kids going to deliver lunch to us individually at our locations, or?
Yeah. So you throw M&Ms at the camera and people try and catch this.
Hey, can I ask a question in all seriousness, Charles? I really like your idea. Is that something that the philosophy of this committee, which is appointed by TREC and the State Bar, and it has certain duties, is that informal ideas of our philosophy and how we go about doing things? Is that something that they should be telling us? Or do we have the authority to do it to the content?
Well, I view it much more flexible. Like, this is what we believe on this date, and and these are our ideas, and we're not declaring, it's not nearly as authoritarian. I'm not saying these are the guiding principles by which future generations of committee members, it's not a rule, it's not a law. I just thought it's more of a historical document that certainly the committee does not need the permission of TREC to tell it how they like to govern themselves. And that's how we govern ourselves. It might be, we might publish it, or not publish it, but if you want to give it to the commission, they can. I don't know if Scott is listening still. He was on the thing, but it's just a thoughts, for the future. That's all it is. It's not nearly so formal. It's not an edict. It's not a command. It's just how we feel today. So. All right. Any other future agenda items we want to talk about?
What about our next meeting date?
Yeah. We need help from staff.
When's the next commission meeting?
Yeah, when's the next commission meeting? And then we try and pick a date that's a couple weeks before that.
It's May 4th, and then I'll look up the August one. August 10th so May 4th and August 10th.
Would you be able to get these drafts to the commission in May for publication? Or was that too tight?
They're pretty much ready to go, aren't they?
Yeah, so what will happen is, assuming they get to the commission on May the 4th, the commission can adopt those for publication. And then there'll be a comment period. So probably, what do you think, July for us? Sometime in July?
Yeah. Late July?
Let's see, what was the date of August? It was August.
August 10th.
Yeah, you probably want to do probably early to mid-July at the latest.
Okay. 17th? That's the same date here. I'm okay with that. I'm not going anywhere.
17th give you enough time?
Yeah.
Anybody traveling to Wuhan?
No. Hey, everyone in Wuhan is saying, is anyone traveling to New York City?
17th, okay. All right, the 17th is fine. So unless anyone objects to that, we'll put that down.
Greg,
Are you 9 or 10 a.m.?
Y'all want to do 9 or 10 a.m.?
Hold on, Greg's got a comment, Ron. Hold on. Greg?
Oh, my comment is, I just have a conflict with that date, so if it's possible the next week.
That's going to push we don't want to go any later than that. because of the timing for the staff to get the comments and prepared for the next commission meeting?
Is July 10th too close to July 4th? It's not for me.
What about the 16th or the 18th? What about just moving the date? No?
18th is Saturday.
18th Saturday.
We could tell everybody you can do it any day.
How about July 10th? Will July 10th work for anybody?
Works for me.
I'm not going anywhere.
That runs into my schedule. The 17th would be a better date. I probably could make that work.
Okay.
That's still.
Well, we'll put that burden on you, Greg. So we'll go back to the 17th.
I'll make it work. Thank you.
And the time?
9 o'clock? 9 o'clock?
9 o'clock. Yeah. Are we, do we know if it's an in-person meeting or is this just play it by ear at the discretion track?
Let's play it by ear. We'll let the staff do that determination.
Decide for us. We'll do whatever you tell us. And then lastly, the minutes. Because we are electronic and separated, is this something that maybe we want to circulate by email later today and just sign off on it?
Yeah, I'm going to have, just because of the unusual situation here was a little more difficult, we're going to have take some time to push the minutes out. So I would suggest let's just don't approve these, but what we can do is we can get those out to you the next, either today or in the next few days. And at least you'll just see them and then we can note corrections for our next meeting, kind of the way we used to do it.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Ron, the option fee receipt, is that going to be included in these minutes?
Yeah, I've got a note in the minutes that we're going to ask staff to make the conforming change on the receipt. If that's okay.
It's just like the earnest money receipt.
Right.
Hey, Ron, please be sure and send those minutes to like Lori and anybody else who's in.
Okay.
Because it'll have that next meeting date in. I mean, I recognize they can't make changes, but they'll be able to see the next meeting date and all that.
Oh, absolutely. So Vanessa well, actually it'll be Amber. She'll send out that to everyone just like she normally does. So it'll come from Amber.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, does anybody have any parting words, comments, thoughts?
Good meeting.
All right, everybody stay healthy. Be with your loved ones. Walk your dog a lot. We'll see you guys back July 7th. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
John, remind me of the new puppy's name.
Coco.
Coco.
All right.
Thanks, Charles.
I'm so excited.
Everybody. All right.
Bye.
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 Take care.
Bye, guys.
Leave the meeting.
Let's see. In the meeting here is.